I sat there, watching the deer, and an unbearable sadness rose within me. It was all over. I tried for 10 years, but in the end, it didn't make any difference. She will never be a full partner in any relationship she has, and I'm tired of trying. Her words about what a loser I was, how little respect she had for me, and that she might cheat on me while she was on the holiday of a lifetime were the last straw. Sighing, I stood up. She started this expecting me to just give in. I was almost sure that she wouldn't believe what was about to happen. I didn't have any money, she took care of that, but I had a nice retirement account, and I knew I'd start withdrawing money from it first thing in the morning. I hope there is enough for a good lawyer. Called from California later that night, and I spoke to the girls, hanging up as soon as she picked up the phone. It took some willpower not to answer the phone, but all I had to do was remember her speech when she announced her vacation. The next day I went to work, contacted a corporation, and began the process. The good news was that I could get $30,000 in a few days. The bad news was that this was all I would get. It was a lot of money for me, but it wasn't enough for one day with the lawyers her company was working with, and I was sure that she would use all their resources against me. We'll have to deal with this. The next night, her mother called and started screaming as soon as I answered. I didn't say a word, I just hung up. She called back 3 more times, becoming more and more insulting. I hung up each time, deciding to record all calls from that moment on. 30 minutes later, she called again. You selfish bastard. Thanks to you, she can't enjoy the trip because she's worried. You have to come to your senses until she meets a real man. You mean that big lawyer? Tell her to try it. I do not care anymore. I'll say he's 4 times the man you'll ever be, and I'm not even talking about your pathetic goodness in your pants. Fuck you, you old bitch. Isn't there a married lawyer out there somewhere waiting for his bitch? I wouldn't want you to fall behind schedule. So many men, so little time, how do you cope? Her sharp intake of breath let me know I was on target, and I hung up before she could recover. 2 more days passed and Tiffany called. After she said she wouldn't let me talk to the kids, I hung up and didn't answer the next 10 calls in quick succession. Disappointed, I walked out and found myself in a bar called O'Brien's, a place where everyone was welcome. You could be faced with a truck driver or a construction worker on one side and a highly paid lawyer or police officer on the other. The retired boxer himself was in charge of all this. He could still intervene if someone lost their temper and carried a bat with him if necessary. People weren't overly polite, but the regulars knew better than to break the rules. I found myself at a table with an old friend who happened to be there. The jukebox played mostly Cranberries songs. It was a little loud, so we were literally shouting at each other. I told him about my plans for the future and asked if he knew any good divorce lawyers. The song had just ended, and I was still talking loudly. I can't afford much, and I know she'll have Martin, Devon, Bailey, and Bartley. They are associated with her company, and she knows most of them personally. Hell, they'll probably do it for free. I'm done, but that won't stop me. Several businessmen in expensive suits were sitting next to us, and although I didn't notice it, one of them suddenly raised his head. After a few seconds, I felt a slight pat on the shoulder. Sorry, but I accidentally overheard part of your conversation. Can I give you a few minutes? It could be beneficial for both of us. I sighed. Why? Are you a divorce lawyer? He smiled and handed me a business card. My eyes widened. It was Lou Walters. I read about him in the newspapers. He was the lawyer that millionaires wanted when it came time to end their marriages. He could break the prenuptial agreement for one client and achieve weak compliance with it for another. I gave him the business card back. I really appreciate the offer, Mr. Walters, but there is no way I can afford your services. He smiled. Oh, my rates can be very flexible for the right things. Please give me a few minutes. After you listen to me, if you want to leave, I will accept your decision. I had nothing to lose, so I followed him to an empty table. Before we begin, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a young, idealistic lawyer, fresh out of school, trying to make a name for himself. He had some bad luck early in his career, running into a very prestigious, very connected law firm. They destroyed him, although his client was right, using vile and illegal methods. A year later, they did it again. It took him years to rebuild his career, and the law firm took every opportunity when he started winning cases to undermine him. He's wanted a rematch for years, and you just gave him that opportunity. Money is not as important as revenge. Having said that, if there is money, I expect to receive my fee. If not, I will do it for free and cover all costs. Interested? We talked for about 30 minutes before a man approached our table. I don't want to interrupt, but we need to go. Liu, I drank too much. I need you to give me a ride. It was strange to look into the eyes of a man whom I had seen in the newspapers dozens of times. It's not often you meet the angel of death and live to tell the tale. He smiled and shook my hand. Bill Maitland. It's nice to meet someone who might interest Lou. It's been a long time. He fell silent in embarrassment. Bruce Davis, sir. It's an honor to meet you. We exchanged pleasantries while Lou paid our bill. He returned, the question in his eyes. You have my business card. Call me tomorrow if you're interested. I looked at his business card after he left. Damn, of course I was interested. Tiffany called the next day, apologizing for the silence and promising that I could talk to the kids if I just talked to her for a few minutes. I learned a little more than I wanted about their activities with good Uncle Stephen from the kids before she got back on the line. Please, Bruce, you're blowing a little quarrel into World War Roman III. I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. Individual vacations can be a good thing. They allow spouses to love each other more when they meet again. I couldn't resist. Of course, Tiff, if they are planned in advance. It's a completely different matter when your wife goes away for a month with a man who wants to get her into bed without any warning, hoping that it will teach me a lesson. Honestly, Tiff, it is. This may not be the lesson you wanted, but it opened my eyes. You will never be a full-fledged wife and equal partner. You will always keep a part of yourself to the side, fully confident that sooner or later I will let you down. We are almost at the end of this path. I hope you enjoy your destination. Bruce, please, you're scaring me. What can I do to improve the situation so that you understand that I am not going to cheat on you and that I still love you? Get on the plane and go home. There was a long silence. I can't do this, Bruce. The kids are having a great time. I chuckled. So you will do everything to improve the situation if it does not interfere with your vacation. Why did I never notice what a spoiled bitch you are? Wait, I think I always knew. I just thought that if I loved you enough, you would change. How did this work for me? Enjoy your holiday, Tiff. Have my kids call me if it doesn't interfere with their time with Uncle Stephen. Oh, and one more thing. Tell your bitch mother she did a great job of messing with your brain. And tell her, Tiff, whether we stay together or not, that she must never speak to me again while she lives, and that is non-negotiable. I hung up before she could answer and listened to the phone ring again for hours. I met with Lou the next day and then again the following Monday. He got straight to the point. Do you have any idea how much your wife is worth? Not exactly, but I suspect quite a lot. She is worth $4,400,000 in cash and assets. Surprised? I was too. She costs that much and makes you pay the mortgage and other bills. It seems a little skewed. I told him in detail how Tiffany thought. He couldn't hide the surprise on his face. How did you stand it? My ex was a cheating bitch, but she never disrespected me like that. If she had done that, the marriage would have ended much faster. I shrugged. I loved her and thought I could change her. So, do you want me to continue? I simply nodded. How bad do you want to do this? I never thought about it and shrugged. I just want this to be over. I would like reasonable access to my children, but that's it. His look spoke volumes. If that's all you want, you can leave right away. I can't do anything for you. Her lawyers will eat you alive and laugh while they do it. She clearly hurt you badly. She goes on a month-long vacation with the kids without you. in the company of people who don't care about the continuation of your marriage, and you just accept it meekly. She was right. You really need to be brave. What do you suggest? Hurt her back. Give her something to think about. Make her focus on something other than herself for the first time. You've been submissive for so long that the idea that you can do anything is completely foreign to her. If you want to continue with the divorce, let her know. Here's what I'll do. I'll send her the preliminary documents in 2 days, right in the middle of her fun vacation. It doesn't really mean anything, but it will get her attention. See how she reacts. If she ignores it, then we can start dancing. I'll videotape everything and keep an eye on her to see what she's really doing while she's not with you. I can't afford. He waved his hand. I will take care of it. And if it comes down to it and you really break up, you can afford it. There is no prenup, so you get half her fortune. Plus your incomes are so different that I'm sure there will be a couple of years of alimony. I'm thinking about a really nice apartment here. If I really wanted to hurt her, it would work. The thought of having to give away some of her money will drive her crazy. So I told Liu to continue, thinking I could always call it off when she came to her senses. Later, I watched it on video. A man stood in the lobby of her hotel holding a sign with her name on it. She came down with the children, her mother, the other assembled vacationers, and Mr. Big himself. Seeing the man, she smiled and approached him. I'm Tiffany Davis. He looked at the photo on his phone. Ma'am, I need to hand you these documents, and you need to sign them. Can I see your ID, please? She rummaged through her purse and handed him her driver's license. He thanked her, took a photo, and handed her a thick envelope. Mrs. Davis, you have been notified. Have a good day. He started to walk away and stopped, turning to her again. They gave me $100 extra to send a personal message. Bruce said to tell you lesson learned. Tiffany looked puzzled for a moment, opened the bag, screamed, and dropped it on the floor. Stephen Middleton picked up a few pages, read them, and grinned. Her mother smiled openly behind her. She immediately dialed my number. Thanks, you stupid bastard. Now she can find a real man. Bitch, don't ever call me again. I looked at her surprised face. She dialed the number 8 times before giving up. Tiffany took her phone and her mother tried to take it from her, but she resisted. I answered the first call. Bruce, what are you doing? You know that I love you with all my heart. I actually laughed, surprising her. Yes, you gave me everything, didn't you? Your love, your respect, your willingness to be an equal partner in our marriage. I truly believe that you love me as long as I know my place behind the children, your mother, your work, and your money. I was never first in your heart, Tiff. If there was, it was a very long time ago. Do you love me? Come home. Let's try to rebuild the broken wreckage of our marriage. Her tone instantly changed. You always wanted to own me, didn't you? Is this your pathetic cry for attention? I'll be back home when this vacation is over, not a minute sooner. And you better enjoy the taste of humiliation, because I won't let you into the house until you apologize and admit that I was right. You know what? I'll practice my speech to make sure everything is correct. In the meantime, can I talk to our children? Anag. She hung up, thought for a minute, and dialed the number again. She tried for an hour before giving up. The next day, it was my turn to receive the package. It contained an economy class ticket for that day and a short message. You win, bastard. Get on the plane, and we'll talk when you arrive. I carefully peed on the ticket, let it mostly dry, but left it damp enough that the smell would let you know what it was, sealed it in plastic, and sent it back. Liu laughed until he cried when he heard it, and then said that I shouldn't have done that. Then he became serious. I checked on her. She hasn't cheated on you yet, but some womanizing lawyer is hanging around her, and her mother leaves him for her every time she gets the chance. The mother and the alleged boyfriend have been seen having private conversations more than once, and this does not bode well. The presentation of the documents shocked her. She really doesn't know how to deal with the fact that you have a spine. Have you heard from her? I handed him my phone, and he transferred all conversations to his computer. He looked at me with a sad smile on his face. She really loves you, you know. Her mind had been filled with her perverted mother for so long that she was never ready for a real relationship. That's why she's stuck. Her mother had it ingrained in her that sooner or later you're going to think about what you would like for them to return from vacation in 10 days, and then it is valid oh so. I want you to be prepared because this could get very nasty. I encourage you to try to get her to be polite for the sake of the children. He sighed, and I felt a moment of sympathy. His marriage collapsed. His wife had an affair with his partner and best friend for a year, but when he found out about it and filed for divorce, she fought tooth and nail. This has been dragging on for almost a year with no solution in sight. It was rumored that their inability to conceive had a lot to do with the relationship's progress. Tiffany called me several more times, allowing me to meet with the children. They wanted to know why I didn't take the ticket, and also their mother. When I called Tiffany and she asked, I pounced on her as gently as possible. Of course, your head isn't that far up your ass. I wasn't invited until I started divorce proceedings, and it was more of an appeasement move than a sincere intention. Do you really think that if you throw me a bone, things will get better? You needed to come home. We could pick up the girls later and have a real family vacation. The alpha bitch couldn't allow that, could she? So stay, play with us, your lawyers and developers, their wives and mistresses, beautiful, rich, high-class people, and don't pay attention to your loser husband. If you came home, we might have a chance. Her temper finally got the better of her. This is the last time I want to hear about your stupid divorce plans. Yes, I did it to teach you a lesson. No, it didn't work out the way I planned, not at all. I will not cut this vacation short. You need to think about how you will meet my standards. We have a lot to discuss when we return. I want you to rest well because I'm going to blow your brains out when we get home. Once we learn to love, perhaps we will be able to look at things more calmly. Is it true? Damn, this stupid defense makes up for being abandoned for a month, so you could cavort with the rich and powerful, flirt, maybe have a little fling, and see if the girls were right. All I can say is enjoy every minute of what they have left because I don't have them left. Bruce, I was already starting to hang up well. 8 days later, I watched them leave the plane, looking tanned and tired, laughing and sharing memories. I promised I wouldn't lose it. The need to see my children was just overwhelming. But when I saw her walk out with Stephen Middleton, holding my youngest daughter's hand, looking like a loving family, I lost it. Some people recognized me, some were about to speak, but one look at my face convinced them that this was a really bad idea. He saw me first, flinched, and instantly let go of her hand. He must have said something to Tiff, and she turned around with a smile that disappeared as soon as she saw me. It was the hand of God that prevented me from killing him on the spot, in the form of my girls. They surrounded me, hugging and kissing me, chatting about what they had done and how much fun they had. I let it go, enjoying the feeling of my children in my arms. Finally, I looked up and saw Tiff smiling through her tears. I stood up and she rushed at me, desperately trying to hug and kiss me. I saw the confused look in her eyes when I didn't return the hug and ducked away from the kiss, gently pushing her away. I'm so glad you came. I missed you so much. You have no idea, but I intend to show you this repeatedly tonight, and for the rest of the weekend, for the rest of our lives. Are you going to take us home? Let me grab our bags and say goodbye to Step. Goodbye, everyone. Take your time. I won't take you home. I don't live there anymore. This will only complicate the divorce. I just wanted to see my daughters. More tears flowed. No, I turned it off. For the first time in your life, Tiffany, it's not about what you want. I'll come tomorrow and pick up the girls if you don't refuse me. This wouldn't be a good idea. Her mother stood away from the girls and Tiffany could see by the expression on her face that things were not going well. She headed towards us and I warned her. Unless you want to make a very ugly and public scene in front of your bosses and colleagues, I advise you to stop your mother. If this bitch says one word to me, I'll explode like a Roman candle. To her credit, Tiffany walked around me and stopped her. Mother, this is between me and Bruce, so please don't say anything. It seemed like the top of her head was going to be torn off, but she stopped. When Tiffany turned around, I couldn't help but stick my tongue out at her. The girls caught it and giggled. She turned so red that I thought she might get hit, but unfortunately she didn't. The girls were extremely disappointed, not understanding anything, but were delighted when I told them I would pick them up tomorrow at 8, looking at Tiff, almost daring her to say something. She simply nodded, and I turned and left. Before I disappeared from sight, I turned around. Tiffany was in Stephen's arms, sobbing hysterically as her mother stroked her back. I think she was still settling in for a new man. The next morning was more than awkward. Girls ran out, eager to spend time with me. Tiffany appeared at the door with a thoughtful look, watching the girls get into the car. I took them to the park, then we took some food with us and went to my house. It was a pretty nice apartment, but I only rented it for 6 months. Lou said that very soon I would be able to afford the best. After we ate, I gently explained that their mother and I were getting a divorce. My eldest understood divorce because many of her friends were from broken homes, but my youngest did not take it very well. I wiped away her tears and reassured her as best I could that I still loved them both more than life itself and would always be a part of their lives. Tiffany moved towards me, but I pulled away. I avoided her for the rest of the weekend, but she surprised me at work Monday night by slipping out of a car I didn't recognize. I knew this would happen, but it still hurt. She was dressed simply in jeans and a top, but designed to seduce. There was even a little tummy showing, and she looked good for her age. Bruce, honey, please come home. I hurt you, I know it now. It probably wasn't the best decision I've ever made, but it can make us stronger. Come home to me and the girls and let me fix this. I love you, Tiffany. I do like it. But you love yourself more. You will never be a full-fledged partner for any man. You will always keep a part of yourself to the side, ready to run away if you are disappointed. I've had most of you for a long time, waiting for you to give in completely. But you will never do this, not for me or anyone else. I blame your mother. Let me ask you one question, Tiff. Your father was a terrible man by all accounts, and your mother rightly hates him. But we're all not like him, darling. None of us. And although she seems to hate all men, she never had a hard time sleeping with most of the men at that law firm. What was her official title there? Available girl in residence. Most of them were married. Did she ever feel guilty for doing to their wives what your father did to her? She is a very perverted woman, and her influence over you will destroy you if you do not come to your senses. She didn't respond to the remarks about her mother, although her face turned red with anger. It's all about the money, isn't it? I sighed. That's it, Tiff. It's your money. It was never our money. I believe that if you could have had sole custody of the children, you would have left me out there too. Do you remember the expression "two become one"? It was in our wedding vows. I don't want all your money. I only wanted you. But that will never happen, right? Not with me, not with someone else you might fall in love with later ever. I can't be what you want, and you can't give me what I need. There's really not much more to say here, is there? And before you ask how I became so cold, I didn't. I love you more now than when we were dating, but my love is simply not enough. But I'm not going to shed any more tears over something that will never happen. Let it go, darling. Let us go. Go find someone like your big lawyer. Talk to him as an equal while you have him until he faints. Maybe then you'll be happy. All the regrets, all the heartache disappeared in a second. I wish I had recorded her tirade. You are just as Mom said, aren't you? I loved you, gave you children, and still it all comes down to control and money. Well, damn you. Just so you know, I never slept with Stephen while we were on vacation, but he tried his best. Maybe I'll actually start an affair with him. God knows it's been so long since I interacted with a real man that everything will seem completely new. Know that, motherfucker. I will never allow divorce, not now or ever. I have the best law firm in the state behind me, and you can't afford anything. They will eat you alive, and when you come to beg me to come back, I will allow you after a while. What will you say about that? She looked and cried at the same time, her hands folded on her small breasts. breasts that I always thought were the right size. I looked at her for the count of 10, trying not to explode. I guess I should say that you just burned your last bridge. Bring your expensive law firm. You just screamed devastation, and I'm about to unleash the hounds of war. I hope you remember this evening for a long time. I got into my beat-up old Volkswagen and drove away, her mouth remaining open. I had several visits over the next few days. The first was from her mother. She burst into the video store in full scream. It was a Friday night, and there were a lot of customers there. "You deceitful son of a bitch! You hateful, vile bastard! Who's that bitch you're sleeping with? Or is there more than one? Answer me, damned one. Madam, I have to ask you to leave the premises. You are disturbing the peace of my clients. There are children here, so watch your language." I said this as calmly as I could, knowing it would anger her even more. She continued screaming before aiming at a woman in her 30s who was staring at her with her mouth open. I had already signaled to my employee to call the police, and they came in just as she attacked her. "Is this the bitch? Well, honey, his wife's mother is going to kick your ass for ruining her marriage. He won't want you when I'm done with you. Hell, you won't want you when I'm done with you." The woman, in a state of complete panic, ran into one of the aisles, and Mom followed her, shouting curses. The client turned the corner and took cover behind the police, who were holding stun guns. Margaret tried to stop, but her heels failed her, and she collided with a policewoman, and they fell in a heap. The large male police officer immediately handcuffed her, and they stood back while she screamed and cursed, uttering slurs at the Hispanic woman and the black man. The woman leaned over and said something in her ear, and she immediately fell silent. She was a client, and I asked her later what she said. She simply smiled and said that she asked her to behave politely. Margaret was ultimately charged with attempted assault, assault on a law enforcement officer, and trespassing because she refused to leave. I got the bonus of showing Lou the CCTV footage, and he got a restraining order. She couldn't come within 500 feet of me, my apartment, or my place of work. 3 days later, I was called to the front to meet with a gray-haired, respectable-looking man in an expensive suit. Let me guess, Martin, Devon, Bailey, and Bartley, right? He looked a little unsure and admitted that this was the case after introducing himself. I didn't give him time to talk. "Go back to the office, Mr. Henry. Don't bother me here again, or I'll get a restraining order for the entire firm." He raised his hands. "You're welcome, Mr. Davis. I'm not here to bother you. I am here as a favor to your wife to try to arrange a meeting between you two to discuss your problems." "It's strange, Mr. Henry. My problems have lessened significantly since Tiffany and I separated. Tell her to just let the divorce run its course. I'm not asking for anything, but if she continues to push, I may reconsider my decision. Tell her if she loves her money as much as I think she does, back off and let the divorce work out. But I understand that before the vacation you were both quite happy. Why did a simple vacation cause such a dramatic shift? She understands that she made an error in judgment that she deeply regrets, but she is more than willing to discuss it. Tell me, Mr. Henry, were you on this vacation?" "Was. With your wife?" "Yes. How many other people were there with their spouses or partners?" "I can't say for sure, but most." "Did Tiffany tell me why I wasn't with her?" "Yep, she said you couldn't get that much time at work." "Well, Mr. Henry, she would have been mistaken if she had not told me 4 days before she left. Even then, she said that I would have to pay for my participation if I wanted to go. She earns significantly more than me, and part of our financial agreement was that she pays for all vacations. She said she was trying to teach me a lesson. Did you hear the personal message I sent her when she received the notification? I know that you were nearby. I have it on tape. I'm not making threats, but she has been under constant surveillance since the first week. Although she was there as a private citizen, the trip was partially financed by your companies. Some of the things we filmed will be of great interest to some spouses who couldn't go. I also saw how she behaved with Mr. Middleton in public, in the presence of most of her partners, while they were all smiling. Free advice, Watch out for it before it gets your firm into big trouble. If this gets ugly, I'll make sure most of the material is made public. Now, sir, go back to your firm and tell them what I said. Tell her what I said. Have a nice day, sir." The man was stunned, I could tell. I assumed that 90% of what I told him was new information. I got tired of it and called Lou. Do it. Complete destruction. I hung up before he could answer. Tiffany Davis sat at the conference table, her mother on one side, Stephen on the other, listening to Matt recount the meeting. The two senior partners were there, just listening. She sighed when she heard that she had been observed for 3 weeks, recalling several specific instances where her actions would not have passed as the behavior of a married woman. She didn't really cheat on Stephen, but it came very close a few times, only managing to stop at the last moment when she realized what she was doing. She knew now that she was doing it out of shock and anger at Bruce's behavior, but she did it anyway. Her plan didn't go anywhere close to what she had in mind. She was still stunned that he actually wanted a divorce. And that's all. Something doesn't add up here, Tiffany. Your husband doesn't have more resources than a pension fund loan, and that kind of money wouldn't even cover a quarter of what 3 weeks of constant monitoring cost. Until now, he hasn't even filed papers. The ones you received on the island were separation papers and unsigned, so we are still in the dark as to who is representing him and what he really wants. So far, he hasn't been demanding. He must know that you are worth millions and there is no prenup. If he has the materials he talks about, if things get ugly, it could cost you a ton of money. I honestly don't know what to advise you. If you don't want a divorce, you need to find a way to get to him without annoying him. If this is unavoidable, you need to act quickly to protect your assets. Margaret couldn't hold it in any longer. Dump this loser, honey. He has served his purpose and given you 2 beautiful children. Now it's time to cut your losses and save your money. Bruce doesn't care about money, Mom. That was never the point. I drove him into this situation, and now I don't know how to fix it. He told me before I left that if I left, he wouldn't be there when I returned, and I left anyway. I never thought he would actually leave me. Nobody knew what to say at this moment. Matt Henry secretly thought that success made her arrogant, and her husband was a quiet, non-aggressive type who waited too long to take a stand. Plus, she got some really, really bad advice from her mother. He personally despised Margaret. She tried to seduce him early in his tenure at the firm, and he flatly refused. There was nothing attractive about her to him. He could see traces of her beauty, but her personality and lifestyle made her features less human, for lack of a better word. They were interrupted by an employee who appeared with a package of documents, whispering something to the senior partner. He shuddered, but smiled. Oh well, now we know who represents him. Lou Walters. We confronted him twice and destroyed him both times. It won't be as difficult as we thought. One of the other partners, Wilson Wilkes, their local family law expert, who had been listening quietly, sat up straight. It could be Mort, but that was a long time ago when he had just graduated from school. I've seen it in action several times. He's fast, lethal on cross-examination, and he's just like us. He will do anything to win. Let's try negotiations first. Matt read the documents quietly, looking increasingly worried as he went along. This could be bad. Very bad. All your husband wants is to get out of the marriage and have access to his children, plus lose royalties. It could easily be over $100,000, depending on how difficult the job is for him. If you fight him, he won't hold back. He will demand half of your assets and alimony in order to live in the style to which he is accustomed. That's about $2.5 million, and alimony can range from $6,000 to $8,000 a month, depending. Margaret screamed and Tiffany fainted. Lou called me a couple of weeks later. They want to meet. I wasn't in the mood. Tell them no. Liu sighed. You should meet Bruce. Find out everything honestly. Tell her once and for all that there is no turning back. Maybe Matt can convince her of sanity. Either that or drag the case through court. It could take months, trust me, I know. His divorce was still going on for, I think, almost a year, a record for Florida. His ex, Mona, was a pretty smart lawyer, and I know it was terrible. I met him once right after the meeting, and he looked like a ghost. I took a chance by calling his best friend, Bill Maitland. He showed up within 40 minutes, and we took him to O'Brien's bar. O'Brien looked at us, took a dusty bottle from a shelf, and led us to a quiet corner. "Here, boys, you're going to need this." 50-year-old whiskey, smooth as silk, with a punch that could knock down a mule. We drank a bottle. Bill had recently gone through a difficult divorce and was still in pain. "God, I hope I won't be so exhausted when my case is over." Bill raised his glass when we finished the bottle. "For bitter endings and sweet beginnings." We all raised our glasses. I have never heard a more accurate toast. He later told me it was an old Irish saying. I walked up to the bar, slightly swaying to pay, and Pat waved me through. "He's a good guy, Mr. Davis, with a wonderful wife." They worshipped the ground each other walked on for many years. Then they found out they couldn't conceive and everything went wrong. Both were suffering, and when he found solace in work, she began an affair with his business partner. This went on for a year before he discovered them. It was a very difficult time for both of them. She realized what she was losing, and now she is fighting with all her might to keep him. He was badly hurt, and although he loves her desperately, he will never take her back. "What happened to your partner?" O'Brien chuckled. "Oh, they dissolved the partnership, and he continued on his flirtatious ways. In the end, he seduced the girl and woke up one day with almost every bone in his body broken. He was in a cast for 8 months, and as soon as he could walk, he left town. I heard he's in Portland or somewhere on the West Coast. Good deliverance." I looked at Lou as Maitland helped him up, wondering if he was capable of such violence. I trained in martial arts for 20 years and fought professionally for 2 years, so I knew how destructive someone with little training could be. Bill and Liu got into an unmarked police car and drove away. I turned around and saw a taxi waiting for me with a message from Maitland. "Thank you for helping my friend. He needed this today. If you ever need a favor, let me know. The taxi is paid for and will take you wherever you want." I went home, took a semi-cold shower to recover, and collapsed. I was just starting to fall asleep when the phone rang. I answered sleepily and heard silence. "Hello? Hello?" Then I heard it, uneven breathing with a hint of a sob. "Tiffany?" The line immediately went dead. I thought about calling her, but I knew she wouldn't answer. It took me a long time to fall asleep. I called Lou the next day. "Arrange a meeting." Liu trained me mercilessly. "Let me speak. Do not engage in dialogue with her, and do not answer her lawyer's questions. Do you understand?" I understand. Our plan went to hell as soon as we entered the large conference room, finding it crowded with lawyers and their assistants. Liu raised an eyebrow at Matt, who blushed. Mort Bailey immediately began to attack. "Young man, do you know who I am?" Of course, I knew who he was, but I wanted to tease him. "I'll go out on a limb, and it's just a guess. A very old lawyer." He blushed, his partners looked alarmed, and one of the paralegals turned away to hide a smile. Liu looked stunned and then chuckled. "Good observation, Mr. Davis. This, gentleman, Mort Bailey, one of the founders of this firm." "Really? I thought they all died years ago. He must be 100 years old now." Mr. Bailey was not happy. In his sternest voice, he began to speak. "Stop acting like a teenager, Mr. Davis. You're making me wonder why Tiffany is so desperate to save her marriage. Now listen to me carefully. You will stop this ridiculous process. You will go home to your loving family. You will undergo counseling until you resolve your differences, and I expect sincere gratitude when we meet again. Our firm is willing to cover all consultation costs as a gesture of goodwill." Liu smiled openly. "Geez, Mort, this isn't some teenager who stole your car, and your gesture of goodwill is just a clear attempt to cover your ass if this goes to trial. We have lots of photos, taken with very high-powered cameras. Permission. Do you think your company's reputation will remain intact if we expose the bacchanal that your corporate vacation has become?" I hope you say no to our proposals. I've waited 9 years to shove something up your smug ass, and so have you. They gave it to me on a silver plate. I thought the old man would have a heart attack. I couldn't help but laugh as I stood up. All these people are lawyers and paralegals. They're all so attractive. Well, except for Marge. Looks like you got them from Central Casting. Did you sign with a talent agency to fill the spots? It was supposed to be a simple meeting between me, my wife, her lawyer, and mine. This wasn't supposed to be a planned performance. And why are Big and Bitch here? Sounds cool, right? Maybe they can take their show on tour. And Bitch shouldn't be within 500 feet of me. You should know that since you're the one who got her twisted ass out of jail, maybe I should call the cops instead. I think Liu and I will just leave. I wasn't a fan of the circus. Here's the deal. 2 weeks, just Matt, Tiffany, Liu, and me. No one else. If I find her mother somewhere nearby, it will be another 4 weeks. I would ask you if you understood, but I don't care. Shall we go, Liu? You could have heard a pin drop when we walked out. We were halfway to the elevator when 2 assistants and a paralegal caught up with us, first demanding and then begging us to return. We didn't answer, and they gave up when we got to the elevator. We made it inside before Liu collapsed laughing. I just chuckled when he spoke. I was just going to beat them up softly, and you took off and fucked them in the ass. I just smiled, the image of Tiffany silently crying still in my head. Weeks passed, and the meeting was scheduled to take place at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It wasn't going to be in any of the offices, so we decided to go neutral and rented a small conference room at a local convention center. Liu warned the firm several times that if anything funny happened, all negotiations would end. He specifically warned Stephen Middleton and Marge not to approach. Liu even went so far as to hire private security for security. They were the ones who noticed Marge and Bolshoi. Liu was alerted and kept 911 at the ready. He quickly spoke on the phone. My client and I are heading to a conference at the Westin Convention Center, and there is a woman with a restraining order against her waiting to attack him. Please send an officer. We walked a little slower, and once we even stopped for a few minutes, talking. What are you doing? I'm stalling for time. I want the cops close when she surprises us. Ready? I nodded. We had just approached the building when she ran out. You bastard! Leave Tiffany alone. You won't see a dime of her money, I guarantee it. Can you hear me, you bastard? She was literally drooling. I smiled. Sorry, Marge. All the pleasure you've given over the years must have damaged your vocal cords. I don't quite understand what you're saying. Had some good lawyer sex recently? Or have they already replaced you with a younger one that they can actually feel? Her face changed colors from red to white to purple. She was practically foaming at the mouth. You bastard! Stephen is going to kick your ass and have sex with Tiffany in front of you. How do you like that? She swung at me, and I could have easily avoided or blocked the blow, but I did nothing. Everyone on the street could hear the sound of her palm hitting my face. Music to my ears, I chuckled as the cops tackled her to the ground, kicking and screaming. She was bundled into a police car and taken to jail within 3 minutes, especially after Liu showed them a copy of the restraining order. I looked around for Middleton, but he was hiding somewhere under a rock. Liu texted Matt Henry the full video with the message. You've been warned. I'm afraid the conference is canceled. You and your client will be busy trying to get her mother out of jail. We'll call, but it won't be soon. Tiffany sat in shock while Matt raged. Why did you let her do this? In my opinion, your mother was never very stable, and she took all the hatred she had for her ex onto Bruce. She will continue until she gets into serious trouble, of which even the best legal firm in the world's firm won't be able to get her out. Honestly, Tiffany, your mother needs professional help. We're obviously not going to meet with Liu and Bruce, so let's see what we can do for your mother. Wait a second while I make a call, get yourself together, and I'll be back as soon as I'm done. He answered the second call. Stephen Middleton. He moved the phone away from his ear. The voice was so loud. You idiot! What were you thinking? You were given specific instructions to stay away, and you brought her mother knowing about the restraining order. They have a video of you talking to her minutes before the attack and a recording. How are you hiding when the police show up? Your partners will be extremely unhappy with you, very unhappy. You don't have to tell them. Matt laughed. I don't think so. I've worked too hard to get to where I am now to have it all ruined by some horny bastard who can't resist flirting with a married woman. Get ready, buddy. You're in for a lot of apologies and bows. Matt returned to the room to find Tiffany sitting with her head on the table, crying. He lifted her gently, and she fell into his arms, sobbing. Why, Matt? How did things get so out of control? I just wanted him to get stronger, stop fooling around, and grow up. Matt sighed. Well, you partially achieved your goal. I don't think he just got stronger, honey. I think he kicked King Kong's ass. You hurt his manhood, honey, the worst thing you can do to a man. Of course he'll fight back. If he has any pride, you need to come to terms with reality, Tiffany. You probably won't get him back. Now, what do you want to do with your mother? Tiffany sighed. Call Mort and let him take care of it. She may have just killed any chance I had of saving the marriage, and I really don't want to see her right now. Tiffany, I know it's none of my business, but you know I've always cared about you. You're like a niece to me, so I have to say this. Your mother needs help, serious help. She's starting to come out of control, and again, if she keeps pushing Bruce, she's going to end up in jail, and not just for one night. Think about it. Stephen Middleton smiled as he entered the office, hoping that today's events had created such a rift in Tiffany's attempt to reconcile with her husband that divorce was inevitable. He wanted Tiffany. He wanted her badly. She was beautiful, she had a great ass, and he knew she would burn in bed if he ever got her. Her breasts were a little small, but he was sure that if he had enough time, he could talk her into having breast enlargement surgery. Sure, she had 2 kids, but he was already trying to suck up to them. The best thing is, even if her husband gets half of her money, she will still be worth millions and the future couldn't be brighter. Her company was making a ton of money and she was getting most of it. The receptionist stopped smiling when she saw him and then broke into a wide smile. Mr. Bailey wants to see you now. I'll call him and tell him you're on your way. She smiled as he left. He had a charming personality and an exceptionally large tool in his pants, and she enjoyed sex with him immensely. But after he slept with her a couple of times, he lost interest in her and started pursuing someone else. As she thought about it, she considered herself lucky. The poor woman he was pursuing now was doomed to a broken heart if she left her husband for him. It almost made her want to warn her, but she was also a bit of a narcissistic bitch. And this mother, she was clearly abnormal. Maybe they all deserved each other. Stephen put on a confident smile as he entered the interior. Wilson Wilkes was there, and neither of them was smiling. Mr. Bailey, Mr. Wilkes, how may I be of service to you and the firm on this fine day? Wilkes spoke first. You can stop harassing married women, especially those who are not directly involved with the firm. The husband may not have any resources, but he has powerful new friends. Friends who can make life very difficult for everyone in the firm. Mort spoke. Listen to him, Stephen. Divorce is practically a foregone conclusion, so stay away and don't add fuel to the fire. You know well that our firm has a history of entangled alliances, so we have largely turned a blind eye to your actions. However, now that someone else is looking after you, you need to behave properly, okay? I understand, sir. You can count on me. Arrogant bastards, mind your own damn business. When I have money, I'll start my own company and our specialty will be kicking your petrified asses. Stephen continued to mutter angrily to himself the entire way to his office. He calmed down when he opened his computer and looked at the screensaver. Tiffany, in all her glory, wearing a very small bikini. He almost won her then, until her eldest child screamed from the shore. She gently pushed him away and swam to the shore. Then, at the club, he danced away from the group on a small balcony. They both drank heavily, and she didn't resist when he kissed her. The next day, she waved the rings under his nose. I want you, Stephen. God knows how much I want. But as long as I wear these rings, it will never happen. I already lured you in, and I apologize. Please respect me for this. He was furious, but he put on an indifferent smile, sucked up to her children, and belittled her husband in every possible way at every opportunity. He almost did a dance of joy when she collapsed into his arms at the airport. It was only a matter of time. A month later, Tiffany, Matt, Liu, and I sat in a small conference room with Judge Catherine Holden. Dear Judge, she was asked to mediate the meeting to keep the parties calm and find a better solution. Liu was not happy with the choice. Mort Bailey's fingerprints are visible here. He could have brought her here, but I've encountered her a couple dozen times. She's sharp as a needle and fair. The downside is that she's a hopeless romantic, so she tends to root for a happy ending. We have to be on our guard. These are the most unusual circumstances I have ever encountered. Mrs. Davis, I honestly don't understand your logic. Mr. Davis, I'm not sure what to make of your passive acceptance of the situation for so long. She stopped to adjust her reading glasses. She was really attractive for her age, and it was said that she had relationships with one or another senior judge. I wished them happiness. Mr. Davis, I heard that you are completely against counseling. I even understand your logic. But I have never seen such an incompatible couple who are clearly still in love with each other. Your resolve almost crumbles every time you look at her, and Mrs. Davis, it's obvious to everyone that you want your husband back. Now, it's my job to find a solution in these situations. So, Mr. Davis, I want to ask you for a favor. Talk to someone, individually and as a couple. Discuss everything, and if you see no other option when you appear before me in court, I will approve the divorce. I'm not talking about long-term therapy, maybe one individual session for each and 3 joint sessions. Do both individual sessions in 1 week, but 3 joint ones, weekly until they are completed. 4 weeks, Mr. Davis, is not much in the grand scheme of things. It will be over before you know it, and I will be more favorable to approving the divorce, knowing that you have made the last attempt. I'll even say please. I was on the verge of an explosion, while Tiffany looked hopeful. Liu and Matt both leaned forward. Matt spoke quickly. Do it, Bruce. Trust me, it will help. Liu, who was still forced to attend what amounted to marathon counseling sessions, wasn't so sure. Or you can get bogged down in a never-ending stream of crap. However, if they sign a binding agreement that once the sessions are over, they are over, and can only continue if Bruce agrees, I think you should do it. I think everyone was shocked when I agreed. Tiffany had a huge smile on her face. I could tell that she firmly believed that I had returned to her. I hope she's ready for what's really going to happen. The judge took the choice of consultants out of our hands, saying that if she did, no one could accuse her of bias. Martha Jones was 10 years older than us, I would say in the mid-40s, and had been practicing for almost 20 years with an excellent reputation. Her only job, she assured us, was to find a solution, regardless of what she personally thought was right. I went first, and I think she thought I was lying when I told her about our life. I told the whole story of our relationship from the very beginning. She made some general comments at the end. You must have really loved her to live the way you did. Tell me, in your honest opinion, do you consider yourself a good writer? Many of your problems seem to stem from your passion and determination to continue. I didn't like my answer, but I had to be honest. Based on my track record, the facts would disagree, but I'm a really good writer. I'm just a good writer who hasn't written a good book yet. It's this belief that keeps me going. Tiffany knew about my dreams and even encouraged me the first few years, but as she moved up the career ladder and the money got better, she openly began to hate it. She told me more than once to stop chasing something that I would never catch up with and do something useful in my life. I simply cannot give up my dream, and perhaps I never will. Fair enough. Thank you for your time, Mr. Davis. Remember, your first session together is next Thursday. Please see my secretary on the way out. Thank you, Dr. Jones. That was one of the things I admired about her. Early in her career, she decided to always keep things professional, so she always addressed her clients as Mr. and Mrs. and insisted that they call her Dr. Jones. I'm not here to be your friend, I'm here to be your guide. I want you to keep in mind that this is a professional relationship and should be taken with the seriousness it deserves. I completely agreed. Tiffany looked around the office nervously. It took 4 months, but she felt she finally had a chance to get her husband back. She knew she had to move slowly, with caution. It was too important for her to ruin it, and besides, she actually achieved what she wanted when she left Bruce for a month. He had definitely grown in appearance, and she wondered how difficult it would be to manage him in the future. Confident that she could bring him to obedience, she smiled, glad that she would get her life back. It only took Dr. Jones 20 minutes to destroy her confidence. Before she spoke, Dr. Jones outlined the results of her session with Bruce, pausing when she finished and looking closely at Tiffany. Did he lie? It all sounded as unfair as she described it. Bruce is many things, Dr. Jones, but he is not a liar. Yes, our relationship is basically as he described. You make about 8 to 10 times more than your husband, but he pays almost all the bills. Does that seem balanced to you? Tiffany sighed. You don't understand. A man has to support his family, and he has no right to my money. That was our agreement. It seemed like it was much more acceptable to you than it was to him. What were your financial responsibilities? I clothed the family and paid for all the extra expenses. For example, vacations. She sighed. Yes, Dr. Jones, I like vacations. I'm sure Bruce told you about the time I left him for a month for a vacation on the islands. Yes, it was unfair, and yes, it was intentional, and yes, I said a lot of hurtful things. Things before I left, but I did it for a reason. I wanted to shock him so that he would give up his childhood dream of becoming a writer and enter the real world. He is not an idiot, doctor. He could succeed in anything if only made an effort. So, your way of motivating was to poke him with insufficient financial resources, leaving him at home while you had fun on vacation, leaving him with the idea that you may or may not take a lover while you are away. Indeed, Mrs. Davis, does that sound like reasonable behavior for a married woman? This sounds like the behavior of a desperate woman who wanted her husband to make her proud of him again. When I realized my mistake, I sent him a ticket to join us. His stubborn dignity did not allow him to come. So, you've admitted that you've lost respect for him. You and the rest of your family were flying first class, but you sent him an economy ticket with a nasty note to tell him to stop whining. Did you really expect him to come? He says that you asked several times what it would take to heal the breakup before it came to this. When he told you to prove your love and return home, you refused every time. Why did you do it if you knew that your relationship was serious? Danger. By your own admission, you are quite rich. It would have been easy for you to fly home, settle your differences, and later have a nice family vacation. Why didn't you do what he asked? For the first time in all the sessions, she lost her composure. Because he doesn't own me. I'm my own boss, and I can do what I see fit. He needed this lesson, and I endured long enough to give it to him. I was embarrassed when he accompanied me to corporate events. I was too humiliated to introduce him as a video store manager, so I said that he was a writer working on a book. When they asked what he wrote, I said that he had not yet been published. After 3 years, I was tired of it. He was proud to be my husband and showed his love by becoming a man of the real world rather than living in his dreams. So you think he's no longer a suitable partner for someone of your level? Yes. No, I don't know for sure. I still love him, and this breakup was terrible. I've never been so lonely in my life. And believe me, doctor, there were several successful, quite handsome men who offered to console me. I even succumbed to temptation once or twice, but I remained faithful. Why can't we go back to the way things were before? You mean like before the holiday? You disrespect him, exclude him from your life and the lives of your children while you go away without him. I'm afraid you won't be able to turn back time, Mrs. Davis, and this could be a fatal blow to your marriage. Did you really think he would stay the same after you left, while he was practically begging you to stay? You've both told me that one of your goals was to get him to be brave, and now you're not happy with that. What exactly do you want, Mrs. Davis? Tiffany finally broke down. I want a man who will be my equal. A proud, successful, confident man who will not be interested in my money. Dr. Jones realized she had reached a turning point. So, your stated intention is to never allow him access to anything you have. Why? Tell me, of all the married friends and business associates you know well, how many have the same agreement as you and your husband? A lot. My guess is none. She abruptly changed the subject, keeping Tiffany in the dark. Tell me about your parents. Did you have a good upbringing at home? Did your father teach you responsibility and your mother love? My father was a creepy jerk who abandoned my mother when I was little, leaving her in debt after draining her bank accounts. So you think all men are like this? Is Bruce like this? No, Bruce isn't like that. But then again, I'll never give him a chance to touch what I've earned. Is that the reason you're so insistent that he pays the bills? Who are you punishing here, Bruce or your father? The realization hit her like a bucket of ice water, and she fainted. When she came to her senses, she was even more determined to keep everything as it was. Martha Jones reviewed her notes after she left, frowning. This will end badly, no doubt about it. Her best hope was to send Mrs. Davis into long-term counseling when it was all over. Perhaps this will save her next husband from a world of misery. I sighed as I walked into Dr. Jones' office. This was the third and last session, thank God. The first two were disasters. Tiffany couldn't figure out what was wrong with her behavior and attitude. She was upset that I was upset and wanted me to come home and let her love me and heal my wounds. Tiffany, darling, you are the hottest woman I've ever known. Honestly, I know I'll probably never find someone on your level again. I'll miss the love, no doubt about it. But we can't live in bed, and we'll still have to face real life. I've loved you most of my adult life, and it will be a long time, if ever, before I stop loving you. But it's time to move on. I'll be what you want me to be, and you'll never change. We'll never be one. You'll always have a tight grip on your money, and there'll always be a part of you that I'll never have like you've always had. Sneakers in the closet next to high heels, and you will always be ready to put them on at any moment and run away. This may happen next time when I disappoint you and do not live up to your expectations. Yes, I am sure that we will be better than ever. Time, but sooner or later we will return to the way things were. Let's stop this cycle now and try to move on. Let's raise our children to be happy, productive people who can cope with the disappointments and difficulties in their lives. Dr. Jones joined the conversation. Mrs. Davis, this is the last session. If I saw the slightest chance of a happy ending, I would insist on additional sessions. But you two are so far apart in expectations that I seriously doubt that any reconciliation will last. I'm going to recommend to the judge to grant the divorce. I know it hurts now, but in the future you will see that it was the right decision. I'm sorry that it didn't work out for you. I see that you both still love each other, but this, no more is enough. Tiffany set a new record for hysterics, screaming and literally foaming at the mouth a couple of times. You just wanted to own me, didn't you? Go to hell, go to hell, go to hell. Get your divorce, enjoy being alone while I enjoy passionate sex with a real man. Forget about the kids, you won't see them anymore. I am sure that between me and Mom, we will teach them how to treat men correctly. They will grow up to be strong, independent women who are not dependent on men. Forget about my money. I will give it all before I give you a dime. I think I will give it to you. To court for alimony. Go to hell, bastard. She finally calmed down, realizing at least part of what she said, covered her mouth with her hand, and began to sob. She hit me hard with her threats, and I stood up. Sorry, Dr. Jones. I know we have half an hour left in the session, but I think you'll agree that we're done here. I thought this was going to be a huge waste of time, but I've learned a few things about myself, about Tiffany, and about the condition. My marriage. Unpleasant things in general. Thank you, sincerely. I walked out while Tiffany was crying and Dr. Jones was calling for me. 3 days later, I received a court date. Tiffany did not respond to therapy as I had hoped. She went into DEFCON 4, an all-nuclear offensive that surprised almost everyone. This is absolute nonsense, but in the long run, it will help us. Alimony, maintenance, what were they thinking about? I can't believe Matt agreed to this. He has to understand what a huge Pandora's box this will open. Liu looked at me carefully. Bruce, I want you to swear to me that if we start this, you'll see it through. Seriously, if you think there's even the slightest chance of reconciliation, we can stop now. If not, then it will be a war. They are so stupid that they go to it with their eyes open. I'd love to open their eyes to the real world. I'm serious. Make it public, make it painful, and make it expensive. She should not have gotten a restraining order that prevents me from seeing my children. I was furious when I received the summons. I never thought that Tiffany would try to poison my relationships with girls. I strongly suspected that Marge had persuaded her to do this when she was emotionally weakened. Liu assured me that he would have this order canceled, but it would take time. Liu, with Matt's encouragement, made another attempt to stop things before things got really ugly. Leave it, Tiffany. It's gone too far. Too much pain has been spread for either of you to go back. Give him a fair settlement, forget about him, and move on with your lives. She looked at him as if he had grown two heads. You're my lawyer, remember? Do your best, and I expect good results. He simply sighed and lowered his head. Liu tried. Please, Mrs. Davis, I'm begging you. If we go to court, everything will be public record. Years from now, your children can read the transcripts and understand how hard this was for both of you. Let's all maintain our dignity. Her tirade was epic. The action lasted 4 days, received national coverage, and made us both look pathetic. On the second day, the cartoonist released a drawing, which ended up in the New Yorker after the case was completed, attached to a detailed article. The cartoon depicted both of us, me as a mouse with a lion's head, her as an eagle with huge talons and an exaggerated beak. The caption read, Super Weakness vs. Alpha Witch, the Mouse Roars. When it was almost over and the vehicle records were revealed, they showed a photo of her house, with the open garages with all her cars gleaming, next to my dirty old Volkswagen in the parking lot of an apartment building. Public opinion was definitely on my side. It was a cool December morning when we entered the courtroom for the last time. He was called a hanging judge, but I have never met a more principled person. He is also still suffering from his own divorce 3 years ago. She really tried to hurt him, but the lawyers sided with him, exposing her lover as a mid-level substance dealer and caught her in their business. She walked away with a third of what she expected and spent most of it on legal expenses. She left the city as a beggar, and it is rumored that she chose the oldest profession in the world to pay rent. The judge called us to order and looked at the crowded room. Liu wisely spread rumors that this could become a landmark case, a nearly penniless husband divorcing his wealthy wife and demanding a fair division of property. There were many journalists and many in the legal profession aware of the blood feud between Liu and Martin, Devon, Bailey, and Bartley. I was surprised to see Bill Maitland's ex-wife in the audience. I wonder if she was gaining experience for her next husband. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems to me that this case is of considerable interest. I do not want any shouting, no comments, and no disruption of order. This is a common divorce case. There are thousands like this in our country. Now, let's start with the opening statements. Matt Henry tried his best, but he had a weak case. Everything started to fall apart when Liu called Tiffany to the stand. He looked at her with real sympathy in his eyes after she got settled. Mrs. Davis, do you agree with the estimate of your net worth? Yes. This was said in an even tone, without emotion. I knew that it would be difficult for her to control her hot temper, and it wouldn't take long for Liu to provoke her. Do you agree with your husband's net worth estimate? She nodded. Then why are you so desperate to deprive him of his fair share? He was married to you for 8 years. Tell me, even with such a huge difference in your income, who paid for the house? Bruce paid, but I made a down payment. Noted, who paid for electricity, cable TV, and the like. He was paying. Why? For the first time, she looked defiant. Because it was his responsibility as a husband. So, you earned on average 8 times his salary per year. What were your responsibilities in the marriage? What did you spend your money on? I took care of my girls, paid school fees, and any other random expenses. Did that include vacation? Tiffany knew where this was going, and she knew there was nothing she could do to stop it. Matt jumped to his feet in protest, but the referee overruled his protest. That's a fair question, Mr. Henry. Accounting for finances is a big part of the process in these cases. Carry on, Mr. Walters. Do you understand what caused all this? Yes. Would you like to explain? No. Well, then let me explain from my client's point of view. You took him by surprise by announcing that you were taking your family on a month's vacation to Hawaii, and he wasn't included unless he could pay for his participation and could arrange a vacation for him. Isn't it true that you told him that you were leaving him on purpose to teach him a lesson and that you may or may not have an affair while you're gone? It wasn't like that. Please, Mrs. Davis, enlighten us. What really happened between you and your husband? I knew it was cruel, but I needed to teach him a lesson. He wasn't doing his part in the marriage, working a dead-end job, chasing a ridiculous dream. This should have been a wake-up call to motivate him. Well, it didn't go according to plan, did it? You have hardly communicated with him, over and over again, denying him the opportunity to talk to your children. Only the threat of divorce forced you to do something. Yes, you sent him a ticket, business class, while the rest of the family flew first class, knowing that he would not be able to take time off. You've asked him what needs to be done to heal the rift between you, and he's begging, even begging, for you to come home, so you can work on your marriage. Are you here? No. It was said more sullenly, but I could see she was seething. It won't last long if Liu keeps pushing. I'll ask you why later. Going back to the threat of having an affair, did you really mean it? No, despite our problems, I loved my husband. So, the entire month you were gone, parties, clubs, the beach, you never did anything that was inappropriate. She hesitated and admitted in a quiet voice that she had been flirting a lot. Is this all just flirting? Well, I can understand that. After all, you weren't accompanied by a beautiful woman in a tropical paradise. Your Honor, my client was concerned about her fidelity and was watching her while on vacation. May I show a few photographs that might shed light on her activities while she was enjoying herself on the island while her husband was working from home? Matt immediately jumped to his feet. Your Honor, what is he doing? These photographs were taken illegally and cannot be shown. Your Honor, no laws were broken. The photographs were taken while the subjects were on public property, and neither were the photographers. There is no right to privacy in public places in Hawaii. These photographs are vital to our case. Furthermore, her attorney knew about the photographs. We have decided not to introduce them into evidence unless necessary. Given Mrs. Davis's behavior, I think it is best to show them. Judge Herring thought for a moment. Okay, I will allow the photographs to be shown, but not in open court. We'll go to my office for 15 minutes. Is that enough, Counselor? No, Your Honor, but we'll take it. Matt, Liu, Tiffany, and I followed the judge, Tiffany looking like she was about to faint. Well, Liu handed him a stack of glossy 8 by 10 photographs, each more incriminating than the last. He wouldn't let me see them, and now I understand why. The first was of my family at the beach, the kids playing in the sand, and Tiffany and Stephen sitting on lounge chairs, holding hands. It was a scene of domestic bliss, and the smile on her face was bright. The next was of them in the ocean, on a surfboard, waiting for a wave. Her top was either unzipped or she'd taken it off, and his hands were cupping the small breasts I'd loved for so long as she leaned against him. The next was of them in a dark club, dancing, embracing. Both his hands tightly clasped her ass as she pressed herself against him. Her dress, what was left of it, was hiked up so that the bottom of her firm ass was visible. I wanted to break something so badly. I needed to get out, now. Liu nodded, and I ran out, finding myself outside, gasping for air. I heard her scream in the distance as I was thrown onto the sidewalk. Liu gave me a few minutes and came out with a bottle of cold water. I rinsed my mouth a couple of times before finishing the rest. Are you okay now? No, but calm enough to come back. I walked past her without looking and took my seat again. Liu looked at her with real sadness. Ready to continue? She nodded slightly. Are you still saying nothing inappropriate happened? I made mistakes, okay? I was angry and embarrassed and let my guard down. But I never, not once, slept with anyone while I was there. Would you forgive him if he was in the picture with the big-breasted blonde? Her eyes widened and her anger showed, but she calmed down. Honestly, I don't know, but I'd like to believe that I would have forgiven if he didn't sleep with her. I believe you, Mrs. Davis. Let's step away from vacation for a minute. What cars do you have? Why does this matter? Your Honor? Answer the question, Mrs. Davis. I have a Lexus sedan, a Range Rover, and another luxury SUV for family outings. How new are they? I bought a Lexus 6 months ago. The other two are less than 3 years old. Do you drive anything else? I have a company car, a Land Cruiser. What kind of car does your husband drive? None of them. He has his own car. Oh, that's right. He has a 12-year-old Volkswagen with 150,000 miles on it. What kind of car does he drive when his car is broken? None of them. These are my cars. So when your husband's car breaks down and you have 3 other cars in the garage, he has to look for alternative transportation. Why? Because these are my cars. If he got a better job, he could afford a better car. Let me boil it down to the basics. Everything you have is yours exclusively. The money you earn is yours and is never shared while he pays for the accommodation and you contribute and invest your money, right? Yeah, but that's all I have for now, Your Honor. Thank you, Mrs. Davis. Now it's my turn. Although he sometimes looked disgusted, Matt attacked me on the stand, asking questions that had only one answer. Liu kept pushing him back, getting more rejected than satisfied. In conclusion, Matt portrayed me as a gold digger waiting for an opportunity to financially destroy his wife. It sounded a little weak, even to me. Liu was eloquent and sympathetic to both of us. In the end, it was obvious that I had a good chance of coming out financially secure with a divorce in my pocket. Your Honor, if it had been a woman in this case, the decision would have been a foregone conclusion before the hour of the hearing. She is the breadwinner, and he gave her many good years, never complaining about the huge difference in their incomes, paying most of her living expenses while she was saving her money. He was the primary caregiver for her children as she often worked erratic hours. He always adjusted his schedule to accommodate her. Please, Your Honor, give him what is fair and right. It was never about the money, but he deserves a fair settlement. The judge adjourned the hearing for 2 hours to consider the case. It was 7 in the evening when we all returned. The gallery was so densely packed that there were no empty seats. The judge asked us to stand in front of him. Mr. and Mrs. Davis, it is clear that you still love each other. In this case, however, I do not believe that the rift can be healed. Therefore, I will grant the divorce. Under Florida law, I award the husband $2 million, Range Rover, and $6,800 per month for a period of 3 years or until he remarries, if within that period. Again, you will note that this is fair and consistent with the laws of this state. You must arrange for the funds to be transferred to his account within the next 30 days and immediately hand over the vehicle to him. The first maintenance check will be received in a month. Please, Mrs. Davis, be reasonable about this. I will be very displeased if I see you here in a month for not complying with my decree. And Mr. Davis, use the years wisely and plan for your future. The court session is closed. Tiffany collapsed, and the judge called paramedics. He advised Liu and I to leave before she woke up, so we left. The case made front-page news in every newspaper in Florida: the New York Times, the Washington Post, Louisiana Times, and Chicago Times-Sun, and most other major newspapers across the country, including the Wall Street Journal. The headline was, "Welcome to the 21st Century Family Law." Most of the newspapers contained a description of our divorce and the reasons for it. Life went on as usual. Tiffany and I lived parallel lives. I picked up the girls every other weekend and every other Thursday. Judge Herring overturned the restraining order and removed it from public records, sternly admonishing social services for failing to adequately investigate the allegations and requiring Morty Bailey to explain himself to the bar, which resulted in him being issued a warning. I knew she was dating Middleton. It was painful, but I understood that it was inevitable. It took a lot of effort from the law firm to get her to hand over the money. It's strange, but receiving $2 million did not bring me any joy. Liu took $300,000 just to cover his expenses, but for him it wasn't about the money either. It cost more money to hit Morty Bailey, he told me. And besides, my office is full of men whose wives are worth much more than them, hoping for the same result. He was very selective, and the cases he took, he usually won. Most cases were settled out of court as soon as it became known that he was a lawyer. He earned money by the handful, but was still unhappy. He finally got divorced and was dating a local woman, very attractive, the heiress to a multi-million-dollar paving company. I hoped he would find happiness. Sometimes I would meet him at O'Brien's. Sometimes we sat at the same table, often with Maitland. This man has gained an international reputation for his success in difficult and dangerous cases. I once saw his wife or ex-wife, a stunning blonde with an impressive bust. Lawyers seem to attract some insanely hot women, but then again, Tiffany could compete with any of them. Speaking of hot women with big busts, I started dating an Italian girl, a dark brunette with great breasts. Apparently, the girls told Tiffany about Deanna, and I got a snarky call for the first time in months. "So, you finally got a big-breasted woman into bed. Did you think about me while you were playing with those saggy breasts? They'll sag to her knees when she gets old, and I'll still be firm and bouncy. Of course you have them you will never see again. However, in 20 years I can send you a photo." Tiffany, does this make any sense? You should be happy having sex with as much as you have now. Why won't you leave me alone? I don't want to know anything about you, especially about your sex life. Go back to your big one and count your blessings. You still have most of your money, and at your rate, you'll have even more in a few years. You know, I didn't touch that money. It wasn't about them. I'll give them to the girls when they grow up. No, it wasn't about the money, bastard. It was about owning me. I'm still an independent woman. No matter who I marry later, there will be an ironclad marriage contract. This will never happen again. It was a mistake to leave for you, knowing how proud you are. Next time, I will be much more careful. Well, if my heart wasn't already broken, it was now. I never thought marrying you was a mistake, Tiff. I loved you with all my heart, and it just wasn't enough. But I never, until the last few months, regretted marrying you. Do me a favor, Tiff. Don't talk to me anymore. I can't stand the pain from you anymore. She started crying, trying to apologize, and I gently hung up. I took some of my allowance and rented a very nice apartment near the beach, within walking distance of a lot of shops and restaurants. Each of my girls had their own room, which I let them decorate. Rumors have spread about who I am. The girls must have said something to Tiffany, because the next weekend, just before midnight, she called. I immediately recognized the sounds of sex and was forced to listen to a tirade about how hot her lover was, how big he was. The screams and moans got to me, and I hung up. She called back immediately. "Don't you dare hang up, motherfucker. I want you to hear how a real man satisfies a woman. Your woman. At least I was. Now I'll never go back to a loser like you. I want you to listen, freak, because if it weren't for your pride, all this would still be yours." I didn't hang up. I threw it against the wall with such force that it broke. The next evening, she called again. I didn't break the phone. I just hung up and took out the battery while trying to sleep. The next night, when she called, I was ready. You need to stop this nonsense. I'm serious, Tiffany. If you do this again, you won't like it. This must be something serious, Tiffany thought as she was called into her CO's office. She wondered what it would be about. By then it was 2009, and the real estate market was starting to burst at the seams. Easy deals became rare, and people in the industry began to get nervous. Luckily, it was mostly in the family home market, but everyone was still tense. She was immediately shown into the office, and she was surprised to see Morty Bailey there. He and her boss were brothers-in-law, and his firm was closely tied to hers. She played a little when she saw Stephen. After the phone calls, the relationship between them cooled a little. He was becoming more and more demanding, and frankly, she was tired of him. Things went badly. They played the recording, and she recognized it immediately. God, that sounded so cheesy. Why did she even think this was a good idea? She knew why. Even after everything, she still missed Bruce, and the thought of him with someone else drove her crazy. She was crying with shame, and Stephen looked defiant. Her boss spoke. "We got this from his lawyer this morning. He's threatening to sue and post it on Facebook saying who you and your lover are if we don't stop you. Tiffany, you're our best employee, and I've always been good to you. Before the divorce, you have become unpredictable since then, but I chalked it up to an adjustment period. Listen carefully, Tiffany. If you continue this behavior, I will fire you right now. The market is too unstable to tolerate such negative publicity. What you do in your private life is your business, but when it can harm our business, it becomes our business. Look me in the eyes and promise that this will not happen again. Personally, I cannot reconcile the woman I knew everything. These years, with that vixen on these records. If you need help, the company is ready to provide you with advice as much as you need and at no cost to you. But whatever it takes, you need to, simply put, get yourself in order." "Absolutely clear, sir, and I'm sorry. It won't happen again." "Thank you, Tiffany. You can go. Mr. Middleton, please stay." After Tiffany left, the room was silent for several minutes until Morty exploded. "You screaming idiot! What the hell were you thinking, putting the firm in such danger?" Stephen looked a little embarrassed and a little defiant. "I wasn't thinking, sir. We had a few drinks, and that was what she wanted. Honestly, I thought it was funny to torment her ex. I never thought he would write it down, let alone threaten to make it public. You can be sure that this will never happen again. If things get to the extreme, we can block the release of the recording." "Damn it, that definitely won't happen. As of today, you are no longer associated with any accounts that Tiffany's firm has with us at their request. However, it wouldn't matter. I would have removed you anyway. Now, I think the best thing to do is to transfer you. I know you speak fluent Spanish, so I'm assigning you to the Tampa office. And Stephen, a word of advice. You're a good lawyer, but you think in the wrong place too often. You should probably update your resume. Your actions made it impossible for us to offer you a partnership. You understand. As for blocking the record, you sent it yourself, you dumbass, and there is nothing we can do legally. Now," Stephen agreed, grinding his teeth. What choice did he have? He was sent as far away as possible, but still within the state. His chances of a partnership were ruined, and although Tiffany was good in bed, it wasn't worth the price. To hell with these old fossils. There are better companies. It would take time, but he would find a new job and show them who Stephen Middleton was. You shouldn't joke with him. He was surprised to see Tiffany waiting for him. "How did everything go?" "Not very good. They sent me to Tampa and told me I'd never get a partnership." She put her hand on his shoulder as a sign of sympathy. "I'm sorry, Stephen. I know how much you wanted this." Her words cheered him up. Maybe he could still salvage something from this situation. After all, the bitch is still rich. He never loved her, had her as a dare, just to see if he could, but money would be a good consolation prize. "Don't worry, I'll get through it. I still have you after all. Tampa isn't that far away." She removed her hand from his shoulder and looked sadly. "Sorry, Stephen, but I don't want to date you anymore. Too many memories, and although I like having you around, especially in the bedroom, I don't love you. So go to Tampa or wherever and make a name for yourself. Remember me with warmth, I will. What? Is the bitch breaking up with him? Fuck this. Stephen Middleton was the one throwing, not the other way around. You can't want this, darling. It will be a long distance, but we can handle it. No, Stephen, we won't make it. We won't make it because I don't want this. We had our time, but it's past. Please don't make something ugly out of it. Leave it. She left, and it seemed to him that she was laughing. Angry and deciding he needed a drink, he drove aimlessly until he ended up in front of O'Brien's. They never went there. Tiffany avoided the place because she knew it was her ex-husband's favorite place. He liked it a little, thinking about it. The stupid bitch still loved him, but her psychotic mother had messed her up so much that she couldn't express it. I hope that little bastard is here, he thought as he got out of his sports car. I'm ready to beat someone up, and it would be nice if it was him. I was at O'Brien's again, this time with Vic Fleming, co-owner with Henry Clark of the prestigious boutique advertising agency. They were a highly respected company, and I accidentally entered their world. By then, I was Blockbuster's regional manager, responsible for 10 stores, including 2 in Georgia. I had to travel once or twice a month, which I always planned for the weeks when I didn't have the girls, but it was a 25% pay increase and included a company car, a mid-size Lincoln. I realized that I wanted more in my life and that I wanted to provide better for my girls. I met Vic in one of the stores, and he was on the phone cursing. I asked if he wanted to see the list of new products, and he suddenly stopped, looking at me carefully. I told him once that I was a writer, and he remembered. I ended up working with them part-time, making about double my salary at Blockbuster. We met tonight for a reason. I thought Tiffany would be proud of me. He wanted me to work for them full-time, offering me a 10% stake in the company, which would be transferred at 2% per year. At the end of the term, he wanted me to run the agency and allow him and his partner to semi-retire. It was a great offer, and I couldn't understand why he was doing it. You don't even realize it, but you're the hottest thing in advertising in this part of Florida in years. People are starting to notice your work. We've been trying to keep your name a secret so others don't steal you away, but sooner or later someone will figure it out. Who you are, and will want to get you. This is a preemptive strike to avoid this. You will never get a better offer in your life, Bruce. Think about it for a few days and let us know. Now let me give you the next task. We were deep in discussion about what the new client wanted, and I didn't notice when he walked in. Middleton noticed me, shouting loudly as he approached. I didn't immediately realize what was happening until he was almost on top of me, and I turned around on the bar stool. He swung, and I didn't have time to react properly, so I leaned back as far as I could. Stephen was wearing some sort of masculine sparkly accessory, and I felt it cut my cheek. The force of the blow turned me, and I went with it, rolling out of my chair. I started going to the dojo again, training several times a week. I've thought a lot about Vic's proposal. I was reading trade magazines, and when I saw articles about little red machines dispensing movies with no overhead, about the ever-increasing cable market, and about a company getting ready to go online in a couple of years offering entire catalogs for cheap subscriptions, I knew that the end is near. I talked to all my managers, told them what I thought would happen, and left. I shocked Vic when I said I wasn't interested in working part-time, but would go full-time if the equity clause remained in place. I think he almost kissed me. My salary, including bonuses, could reach $150,000 a year, at least $80,000 in bad years. I didn't tell the girls. They would tell Tiffany, and I didn't want to deal with her for a while. As far as they knew, I was still working at Blockbuster. The girls told me that Mom started dating again after a couple of months. I met her 6 months later at an upscale restaurant. She was with an older man whose clothes and mannerisms screamed money, wearing a tight little black dress that must have had a built-in bra since her breasts were jutting out. She saw me alone and came up to say hello, no doubt to show off her companion. "Hi, Bruce. Good to see you. Long time no see. Nice suit." I knew what she meant. The only time I wore such quality suits during our marriage was when she bought them for me for corporate events. She would be shocked to see my closet now full of such suits. I chuckled. Oh, I indulge myself sometimes. I wanted to look especially good tonight. What's so special tonight? Hot date, I grinned as she joined us. Maggie was a stunning redhead who was the hospitality manager on the Bon Chance cruise ship. Her best friend, a French woman, was dating Bill Maitland. Strangely, she was married, but that's none of my business. It was rumored that she and her husband had an agreement. Each could sleep with anyone while they were apart. I knew Maitland was crazy about her. We even went on double dates a few times while they were in port. I just said hot date to get a reaction from Tiffany, but those were the truest words I've ever spoken. She wore green silk that really brought out her fiery red hair, with a cutout that made it clear that it was all her underneath the dress. 38B, as I found out later. Maggie was Irish, and I could listen to her accent for hours. I saw Tiffany tense and chuckled. Pure rage came from her eyes, but she had to remain calm for the sake of her companion. Don't show your hot temperament too early. Although I did catch a glimpse of Maggie's wild Irish temperament, it would have been one hell of a cat fight if they had fought. I'd bet on Tiffany. The girl had only one fear: complete commitment. I almost laughed out loud at the mental image. Maggie made the situation even sweeter by offering to sit at the same table, but Tiffany grabbed the man's hand, declaring that she wanted to spend time alone with her companion. Yeah, me too, but a different kind of privacy. He almost forced me to come here. I would have preferred to spend time in his condo, but he insisted. Well, they say anticipation enhances the feeling, you know. Tiffany had an expression on her face as if she had just eaten and swallowed a bucket of lemons. I enjoyed it. We parted ways, and I sometimes glanced at her, seeing how she was glaring at us. She's your ex, isn't she? Yes. She still loves you, you know. I thought she would attack me when I took your hand. Then again, your look at her wasn't full of hatred either. I sighed. Look, it's too hard to explain. We loved each other. We were just incompatible from the start. She smiled and rubbed my arm. She's looking again. Look, this is our last weekend together for a long time, maybe forever. We're leaving on Monday for a circumnavigation of the world that will last 11 months. Even then, the final destination is Europe. I'm planning on spending some time at home, maybe see the continent. Maybe I'll call you and see if you can take a vacation and spend it with me. It will be the vacation of a lifetime. These words hit me hard, and she noticed how I frowned. Then again, beloved, perhaps not. You are the ideal man for marriage. Faithful, loving, caring for the needs of his partner selflessly. Maybe too selflessly. I myself am not ready for marriage. Maybe someday, but not now. I wasn't kidding when I said I'd rather spend time at your condominium than here. I chuckled. Do you want to skip coffee and dessert? I'd rather serve you dessert in the condo. It's the perfect meal. You can eat as much as you want, and it has no calories. Pay the bill, love, while I go to the bathroom. By the time I paid the bill, she came back and took my hand. We reached Tiffany's desk when she stopped. Oh, wait, love, I dropped something. She bent over from the waist, and the lower part of her lovely ass was almost showing. She straightened up, looked into the eyes of Tiffany's companion, grinning at his gaping mouth. Here you go, love. I thought it would save us some time later. I looked down at my hand. She was wearing very, very small panties. I chuckled and put them in my breast pocket, telling her it was to enjoy her scent. I looked at the couple, bid them good night, and walked away with my hand on Maggie's ass. I felt Tiffany's gaze all the way out. Maggie wore me down, said a tearful goodbye on Sunday night, and walked out of my life. I never saw her again, although she wrote me letters for some time. Tiffany called me on Monday. Was it necessary? No, it was my date's idea. Why does it bother you? We've been divorced for almost 2 years. I could have called you on Saturday night and let you listen to Maggie try to get me up for the 5th time in 7 hours, but I was already there, did it, and I still have scars. Anything else? She hung up again. Why call at all if you don't want to talk? 5 weeks later, I saw her engagement announcement in the newspaper. She was getting married to the guy we saw in the restaurant. He was the executive vice president of a large restaurant chain, quite high up the ladder. He was transferred to the company's headquarters to help launch a new chain of Thai restaurants. It's logical. Thai food was Tiffany's favorite. 7 months later, Vic Fleming looked up as a woman walked into his office. He sat behind a massive custom-made desk that he carried with him every time he moved, becoming more and more successful. It was one of his favorite things in life. The woman was clearly a professional, but a very attractive and well-dressed professional. Her skirt was modest, but had a dangerously high slit. She turned to close the door, and he saw no trace of underwear. He became aroused almost instantly and sat back down. He would consider it impolite not to stand up, but it would be even more impolite to show her the obvious effect she had on him. She chuckled slightly as she sat up and slowly crossed her legs. Vic hoped he was right about the lack of underwear, but was disappointed when she pulled her skirt up a little, covering everything. "Mr. Fleming, I'm Tiffany Hampton. I think I have an appointment." "Yes, Miss Hampton, I have you on my schedule. Let me apologize for not standing up, but I have a condition that makes standing difficult." She chuckled slightly, and he knew that she understood perfectly well what this condition was. She was a temptress, but the fourth wife went into a jealous, bitchy phase, so he behaved. Besides, it was now the end of 2010, and the Great Recession, as it was called, was in full swing. Everyone was starting to feel the pinch, and they couldn't afford to lose a potentially lucrative contract. "Mr. Fleming, my husband is Mr. Hampton. I am keeping my last name until the divorce. Mr. Fleming, our company has been using the same advertising agency for many years, and frankly, we think they have become boring. We cannot imagine this in the current economy. Your company was recommended to our CEO. He looked into your work, and here I am." She leaned towards her briefcase, and Vic saw her high, firm breasts encased in a silky bra. His excitement returned. "What we are particularly interested in, Mr. Fleming, is who is responsible for this work." He glanced at the first few pages and grinned. All of these jobs were done by the same person, our newest employee. He initially worked for us part-time because he liked his old job. He works quickly, has a lot of imagination, and, as they say, thinks outside the box. Wow, all this from a part-time employee. I'm surprised someone else didn't pick it up. Believe me, we had sleepless nights over this scenario. We even offered him 10% of the company at 2% a year to keep him. Wow, I've been with my company since I graduated from college, and I would never have thought that someone would offer something like this to any employee, let alone a part-time employee. I will always be an employee, but I'm a very, very well-paid employee, so I stay with them. Yes, we are lucky. He decided to come to us full-time, giving up his other job. He has been with us for less than a year, and we are getting so much business because of him that we have to hire new people. In the current economy, we managed to get very good specialists. We even tried to lure one guy, but his boss offered him almost the same thing so that he would stay in North Carolina. Plus, he would marry a local girl, and they would not make a killer team. I would like to meet with this person to discuss some ideas that our firm has. If we can come to an agreement, it could be very beneficial for both companies. I'll have to schedule that. He's out of the office right now, working for charity. You might remember the adoption campaign based on milk commercials. Our man has a background in martial arts and has even worked with trainer Betty Bang Bang Burke. Actually, she's married to her financial advisor now. I think he wanted all her money. It was a joke, but Tiffany winced and quickly responded. "Yes, I've heard about that. They're related to that TV adoption marathon that goes on every year before Christmas, aren't they? Miss Burke better be careful who manages her money." Apparently, he was already rich when they met and married her without a prenup before she really became famous. Now she probably makes 4 to 5 times more than him. She does commercials. You probably recognize her from her work for Maybelline. I heard that she has also started acting in films. Sounds great, Mr. Fleming. Tell me, when do you think your man will be available? How about tonight, business dinner? I'll call him to make sure he's free. He dialed the number and was soon on the phone. Bruce, I have a new client here, and she wants to meet with you in person to discuss some ideas. This could be a very good opportunity for us. Her name is Tiffany Hampton. Why are you laughing? Okay, I'll give you the address when you get back. 8 hours will do. Great. Be on your best behavior, Bruce. This deal could be important for us. He hung up, looking at the phone. It's 8 o'clock and you choose a restaurant. Is that okay with you? That's quite satisfactory. If you don't mind, may I ask why your man was laughing? With Bruce, who knows? One of the things that makes him work is his sense of humor, although most of us don't always get his jokes. Little alarm bells had been ringing in Tiffany's head for the past few minutes. The Palace of Siam, 8 o'clock sharp. It's not far, and I'm a big fan of Thai food, and the reviews are good. For the record, what's your employee's full name? Bruce Davis, Mrs. Hampton. He said he knew you. I stood at the entrance, watching her. She had that little frown on her face that I always liked when she was working with her tablet. She always loved her gadgets. She must have sensed that I was watching her, and she looked up and smiled when she saw me. Hey, Bruce. Come in, I won't bite. In fact, I can confidently say that my mouth will never touch another part of your body in this life. I just stood there, and it started to bother her. Are you waiting for something? Yes, I'm waiting to see if this is a legitimate deal or just another opportunity to hurt me again. She actually laughed. Bruce, stop thinking about just you and us. It's already over. I hurt you a little, and you hurt me a lot. You know, right before the divorce was final, I would have gone back to you and tried to find a way to work it out. Our problems. I could have told you the same thing. I would have given us every chance, right up until the moment you called and described in detail your sexual activities. What could make you be so cruel or think that this was a good idea? When have I been that cruel to you? She rolled her eyes. I told you, you idiot, you hurt me badly, so I took revenge. Would I have done this if I was in my right mind? Not for anything in the world. But deep down, no matter how much it hurt, I knew that if I did this, I would tear us apart forever. So I did this to teach you. She suddenly fell silent, realizing that it was already late. Yes, another lesson from Tiffany. It worked just as well as the last one, didn't it? I have to thank you because I learned something. I finally learned to let you go because in a woman who I loved so deeply, there is nothing else left. I must admit that I have not found a replacement for you, but on the other hand, I am in no hurry. There is someone out there for me, I just haven't found the strength to look for her. Let's just say I'm a little wary and leave it at that. You're looking for a slave to own, aren't you? Someone who will be forced to give everything to prove that he loves you. Exactly, except for the part about the slave. You never understood, Tiffany. It wasn't so much about owning you, but about being equals and owning each other. I'm much better off sharing my life with someone who has nothing but complete and total love for me. I make good money now, Tiffany. Not as much as you, but I do well. When I find the right woman, everything I have will be hers equally. Always. I wouldn't settle for anything less. I'm leaving now, Tiffany. I don't care if Vic fires me tomorrow. Honestly, I can't stand the sight of you right now. You can't help but wave the red rag at me, and I always respond like a bull. But not this time. Go back to your life and try to deal with husband number 3 a little better. I walked out the door, and within seconds I was in my car. It was a brand new Cadillac Escalade. Bill Maitland had one, Lou had one, Hank had one at company, and I always admired them. Besides, I hated driving the contract car because it always reminded me of what I had lost. I got a very good trade and value for it, so I splurged. I was speechless when Tiffany jumped into the passenger seat and crossed her arms, looking straight ahead with a determined expression. What are you doing? Trying to prove I'm right. Sorry, Bruce. Seeing you in nice clothes, Working that job I've always dreamed of getting you got to me a little. You should have done it for me, not because you accidentally found this kind of work. I really found it by accident, but I realized that I really liked it. Over time, with or without you, something like this would have happened. She sighed. Please, if we go back inside, I'll behave myself. We'll only talk business, okay? And I would have fainted when Vic told me your name. My Bruce, respected businessman, co-owner of a very respected company. It was like in the movie The Twilight Zone. I got out of the car. One insult, one offensive statement, and I'm leaving, do you understand? She nodded and, to my surprise, grabbed my hand. People watching us probably thought it was a romantic gesture. I took this as a desire to keep me from leaving. When we returned to our seats, the waitress appeared and we ordered. Tiffany was surprised that I only ordered a small bowl of spicy soup. This is all. Yeah, you never consulted me, but I don't really like Thai food. I never thought I'd be here for more than 5 minutes, so I ate at Sunny's before coming here. I saw her eyes narrow before she exhaled and relaxed. While we wait for our food, let me throw out a few ideas. She laid out her ideas, and while some of them were pretty good, many were disastrous. Equally critical, she rejected several of my ideas outright, really liked a few, and wrote down terse notes on the rest. Finally, she enjoyed dessert while I sipped some excellent tea. The waitress seemed to hover over us, and I looked at my watch. It was 11:45, and they closed at 12. I left a very generous tip, but Tiffany grabbed the receipt. Business dinner, remember? We're going to do business, right? I can have someone replace me if that makes you feel more comfortable. I laughed, surprising her. If you act like you did tonight, I'll have no problem working with you. It wasn't that bad, really. I can imagine more painful things, like a root canal. She chuckled and smiled. You became funny. When did you acquire a sense of humor? I almost said I bought it with the money she left me, but I stopped myself. There was no need to spoil the mood. Then she shocked me. You know, there's a bar 2 blocks from here. They say it's a really nice place, and they have a live band that specializes in our music. Do you want to let off some steam? I was about to tell her no, but I saw the look in her eyes, so I shocked her back. Of course, but we won't dance, at least not with each other. I think your rule about not touching any body parts is a very good idea. She frowned, but grabbed my hand and we walked into the bar. It was a really nice place, the band was good, and the drinks were strong. 40 minutes later, we were slow dancing to her favorite song. We danced to it at our wedding, and when tears appeared in her eyes and she pressed herself against me, I did not resist. She pressed herself closer to me. The feeling was both happy and sad. She sensed it and pressed closer to me until she was practically rubbing against my thigh, and my hands wandered from the back of her head to the top of her firm buttocks. She reached out and pressed me even harder to her ass. I had a negative thought and tried to push it away. She felt me tense up and raised her head, knowing what I was thinking. She stopped rubbing, but she still held me close to her. I was happy and sad in equal measure when the song ended. The music stopped, and she began to speak. Bruce, Stephen, and I never. I gently placed my fingers on her lips, but the expression on my face was not gentle. You will never tell me about anything you and Big Boy had. I already got the reports live and in vivid detail, remember? This is a taboo subject for me. Not now, not when we're 80. Is that clear? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I apologized to give her time to come to her senses. When I returned, a man was standing in front of her, and she was shaking her head furiously. No, I won't dance with you. My date will be back any minute, so please go away. I walked around him, and she saw me, turning pale. I didn't give her a chance to speak. Sorry, honey. Long line, you know. Who's your friend? She shrugged. Just a guy. I asked him to leave, but he's still here. I looked at him with the same expression I used when I was fighting. He didn't seem intimidated, being 3 inches taller and 40 pounds more than me. The girl asked you to leave. He pouted. Are you going to force me, little man? I grinned. Yeah, I'm going to. And I'll probably have fun with it. I'm a black belt in 2 different styles, and I fought for 2 years at Ubki. Oh, it's been a while, but I'm still training. I can kick your ass and get back to your place before the ice starts to melt in my drink. You have one chance to fight or run. It doesn't matter in 10 seconds. You might even be able to walk after rehabilitation go. He looked shocked and ran away. I turned around and Tiffany was looking at me like I was a wild cat in the heat. All she knew about my passion for martial arts was that I was a black belt. I never told her about my fighting career, and she never followed the sport, so we hardly ever talked about it. This became known after a fight in a bar. There were even 2 pictures of me from when I fought, and both times I was in the middle of a knockout. We did another dance, and she did everything except actually have sex with me on the dance floor. Just before the end of the song, she kissed me. The lights came on, and the final bell rang. I looked at the clock, surprised that it was already 3 in the morning. We went outside, watching as people dispersed. Those who found a couple were smiling. Those who did not looked dejected. Some were staggering, and several people were practically carried in their arms. What was it? She knew, but she made me ask again. What exactly? What was that about the kiss? If I remember correctly, you said at the very beginning that there was no touching. She shrugged. It's been a while since I've had a man in my arms, and I'm a little drunk. And horny, it didn't mean anything. That's the most you can hope for with me ever again. I sighed. Okay, I thought for a minute that you were sending me signals. I doubt I could do anything good to you after Steven spread you. I probably wouldn't even feel anything. She stood up straight, fire dancing in her eyes. It'll be a cold day in hell before I get into bed with you again. Shall we share a taxi? 45 minutes later, she was on her knees in my apartment, pleasuring me like it was the best thing she'd ever tasted. 2 minutes later, I pinned her against the wall in the living room. She collapsed on my chest, exhausted, and I felt tears. I couldn't stand it. Why, Tiff? Why did you do such cruel things to the man you said you loved? Was he that much better? She raised her head, looking at me with intensity and hopefully a little shame. I would lie to you, but you would know it. He was much more, and he was very good. I admit I liked having sex with him, but I never loved him. And although I am a little ashamed, every time we had sex, part of it was to get back at you for how you hurt me. For a man who had just roughly fucked a woman into a near-comatose state, I didn't feel good right now. She knew that she had hurt me again and rushed to calm me down. Yes, Bruce, I know this is hard to hear, but remember, I always loved you, and sex with you was special because we were in love. I will always choose what we just did. Hear me every time. That still doesn't explain the calls. I was angry, okay? I was furious. You disappeared. I couldn't find you to beg you to come home, to tell you how much I was sorry for hurting you. And then you filed for divorce. Even then I tried to fight for you, until the final divorce. And yes, we had sex that night, but it would kill his ego to know that I did it not because I wanted him, but because I wanted to hurt you. And then the girls came back home and told me about the hot Italian bitch with big breasts you had sex with, and I lost control again. Well, you've definitely managed to hurt me. When he attacked me in a bar, I needed 6 guys and a baseball bat to keep me from killing him. And every time I tried to hit him, I saw your face smiling at me. Does that give you an idea of how much you've hurt me? She turned pale, stroking my cheek, and sighed. You're right, you know. If you did something like that to me, I would never forgive you. But, darling, you always knew I had problems. I always relied on you for balance, right up until the last 6 months. I was so tired of everyone thinking you were a loser that I started to think so myself. My mother insisted that I leave you and find a real man. People in the office behind my back were surprised at how I tolerated you. And who gave them these thoughts? She blushed. But Mom. You can leave it at that. Your mom is the root of most of your problems, Tiff, and that makes her the root of most of ours. I should have been much firmer about that bitch when we were married. I have no boundaries now, so I'll tell you. This woman is crazy. If I could find your father, I would kick his ass as a matter of principle. I told you before, and you didn't listen then, and you won't listen now, but the whole male sex is not like him. We're all decent guys, generally speaking. You'll never know because you won't trust a man long enough to find out. Tell me, why did you and dear Mr. Hampton break up? She put on a stubborn expression, and I knew I had struck a nerve. Let me guess, he tried to possess you, right? She looked away and didn't answer, instead talking about her mother. Did you know that the court ordered her to attend counseling after the last time she encountered you? When she missed her second session, the sheriff's deputies came, and she spent 10 days in jail. Obviously, her identity did not match the other prisoners, and she had to be placed under protective custody until she was released. She was still bruised by the judge when he told her that another missed session without a medical reason would result in 6 months in state prison. This is a medium security facility, madam, and the state doesn't have the time or money to ensure you have a pleasant stay. Now, will I have any more problems with you? Another incentive was that I told her that if she didn't change, I would limit her access to girls. I'm spoiled, Bruce, I know that, but I won't let girls go down that path. She looked at me with a calculating expression on her face. I knew that look. She was deciding whether to tell me something that I could use against her. I'm in therapy now too. When James left, I hit rock bottom, wondering why I couldn't stay in a relationship. So I found someone who I thought could help me. Well, I never expected her to say that. Did it help? Helped, I mean. She didn't look me in the eye. I don't know, it's too early to tell. I knew she was resisting what the therapist was telling her. Old habits die hard, I guess. Emotionally exhausted and physically exhausted, I decided not to continue this conversation. I stood up and looked at her. Her face was a mixture of despair and hope. I was tempted to call her a taxi and send her home, but what harm could one night do? Or rather morning, because it was already after 5. I extended my hand. Come on, we need to rest. Do you need to call someone? Again, she did not look me in the eye. No, Mom is with them, and I told her I might be back very late. So, were you planning on spending the night with me? I let go of my anger at her mother for staying with our children for once. No, she said, hiding her face under her hair, but I was hoping for more than just a business meeting. Well, you got it. I'm going to bed now. She obediently followed me and climbed onto the left side of the bed out of habit. I let her cling to me, my thoughts a mess. I heard her sigh and realized that she had fallen asleep. She pressed herself closer to me, and I myself fell asleep. The next morning, or rather, closer to noon, I woke up from a very pleasant feeling. She raised her head, smiling. It's good that you woke up. I already took a shower and washed you a little with a warm washcloth. Now that you're among the living, let's have some fun. Today I wasn't rude, but I wasn't gentle either. We lay together for a while after that, and then I went to the shower. She explored the apartment while I was in the bathroom and made coffee. We sat in silence for a while until she started talking about how beautiful the girls' rooms were. I let them decorate it however they wanted. I wanted to create a safe space, a kind of sanctuary for them. I knew our breakup was hard for them, so I wanted to do everything I could to let them know that I still loved them. She sighed. We don't have stupid children, dear. When you left, the hard questions began. Kathleen realized it had to do with the holidays, and one day, when she was very angry with me, she said that she would like to stay at home with you, that perhaps if she had stayed, we would still be together. What should I have said to this? I just continued to love them, and everything calmed down. You know they never loved your husband. She blushed. I know. Marrying him was a mistake. I shuddered, remembering how she said the same thing about me. She lowered her head so she didn't notice. Looking back, I don't know why I married him. Perhaps I was just lonely, and he happened to be nearby. We met when his company wanted mine to find them places for a new network. He was handsome, smart, and charming. The problems started right after the wedding. He wanted the girls to go to an expensive boarding school, the same one where his mother was British, and this is quite a common practice for the rich there. When the girls found out about this, they created a scandal. They said they would live with you instead of going to school. It took a lot of hugging and talking to convince them that this was never an option. They tolerated him before and then ignored him. He invested a lot of his money in a new chain that his company was starting. It was his baby, and he was stunned when America did not accept the concept of a Thai fast food chain. The numbers and reviews were terrible. When they started losing money, he came to me, asking me to invest $1 million into the network to support it. I interrupted her with laughter. She was angry when she looked at me, knowing what I was thinking. When I refused, problems began. Of course, I forced him to sign a reinforced concrete marriage contract. Bitter experience taught me this. I couldn't help but smile. She didn't look at me, but I knew she knew. I have more money now than I did then. Lou set me up with his investment advisor. His services seemed expensive, but the meeting left a good impression. I don't work like most advisors. I don't refer you to different mutual funds. I personally select each stock I want you to invest in and put my money where I tell you to. This was enough for me, and after a little more than 2 years, I returned the money paid to Lou and earned about $100,000 on top. It all went downhill from there. He was on the verge of bankruptcy when he left, took a position at another network, and moved to the West Coast. The divorce papers came within a week. He tried to get my money, but Matt was in great shape, and he ended up owing me money when it was all over. Of course, I'll never see it, but it was a moral victory. I thought about it. Liu's former partner moved west. Stephen, too. Bill Maitland's wife's first lover left for Chicago, practically banished from the city. Now, this is her new ex-husband. Are the entire population of the western half of the country cheating bastards? She changed the subject. Can you believe Caitlin has a boyfriend? That little rascal tried to get her to spin the bottle. I talked to her for a long time. Me too. Plus, I started taking them to the dojo with me, enrolled them in the kids' class. That, and maybe I showed them a trick or two that might scare off even the most persistent of boys. She frowned. Why didn't I know about this? Because they asked me not to tell you, and I'm good at keeping secrets. I wouldn't hide something important from you, but girls are girls, you know. I see. Soon they'll start dating, going to college, and leaving us behind. It's the circle of life, Tiff. All we can do is prepare them as best we can. That's always been our job. We love them, guide them, then trust them, and hope our teachings stay with them. Damn, when did you become so insightful? Success seems to have made you smarter. Not necessarily. It was a line from one of my stories, but I thought about them when I wrote it. She couldn't hide the bitterness in her voice. Still chasing that dream. How many rejections have you already received? It hurt. I stopped counting right after we broke up. It doesn't stop me. Sooner or later, I'll understand it. She realized she had hurt my feelings and backed off. So where are we now? Will we see each other again? I saw the shock on her face when I answered. I don't think so, Tiff. I can't afford it emotionally. But why? Tell me you didn't enjoy last night. Tell me you're not such a coward as not to at least try. What we had was special. It's still special. Why can't we get it back? Tell me something, Tiff. Let's say we get married again. Will we be united? We'll have joint accounts and savings, no prenup, drive each other's cars. Will you still keep your sneakers under your bed? It hurt, and she let out her anger. Asshole, you can't let me be myself, can you? You'll always try to control me, won't you? Yes and no. It's not about the money. It never was about the money, and you know it. It's about equality, about sharing everything. You'll never be able to do that, and you know it. What does your therapist say about everything, or did you even tell her? Yes, I'm guessing it's a woman. You never opened up to me, so I don't see you doing this with some strange man. She refused to argue. So that's it, huh? I felt like the whole world was on my shoulders, and it was an unbearable burden. Yes, that's it. I won't see you again, Tiff. I just can't go back to the way it was, and you'll never change. So let's just go back to our parallel lives and share our beautiful children. That's it. What can I offer you? She didn't say another word, got dressed in silence, and slammed the door as she left. I sat down at the dining table, slow, heavy tears falling onto the shape of my retro tabletop, and I wondered if I really was an idiot. We got the contract, and another woman took over. She even tried to seduce me. I almost slept with her, knowing it would get to Tiff, but in the end, I didn't because I just didn't want to stoop to that level. For several months, I went with the flow until another random event changed my life. We were back at O'Brien's, celebrating Lou's recovery from his plane crash and his reunion with his wife. At least she realized it and found a way to bring them back to each other. Mona was a very attractive woman, with a figure as prominent as Tiffany's. There was Maitland with the mysterious French woman everyone had heard rumors about, as well as Vic Fleming and his wife, whom I nicknamed this year's model, knowing that their marriage would collapse before the end of the year, and Hank Clark. His wife exuded more sexuality at 50 than any two 25-year-olds, and I thought my relationship problems were nothing compared to the crap she was giving him. They always somehow managed to stay together, and the fact that Henry had almost left her for a woman at the age of 30 gave her the signal she needed, and she stuck to him like glue. We were talking about various things, everyone was in a good mood, the ridicule and teasing was mild but sharp. When Maitland asked if I had written anything lately, I've written a lot since that night with Tiffany, but nothing coherent enough to follow up on. Yes, but nothing good. Mona, who had been silent until that moment, still trying to return, now spoke up. You know, I read several of your stories in different magazines. I looked you up when Leo mentioned you were his friend. What do you think? She looked clearly uncomfortable. Listen, if we're going to be friends, I need you to be honest with me. If I ask you a question, never try to filter the answer. If I didn't want the truth, I wouldn't ask. Okay, but you asked for it yourself. You write like a wuss, Bruce. What you write is suitable for girls and old people, but everyone else is almost suffocating from it. There is no conflict, everything is always happy. People don't want this. They need dirt, real conflict and resolution, emotion. If you can't give it, you're doomed. Sorry, you seem like a nice guy. Well, I asked for it myself. That didn't make it any less painful, though. Well, that explains all the refusals. Vic listened, smiling. Thank you, Mona. The rest of us tried never to discuss his writing. The thing is, Bruce, you have the potential to write like she says. Some of your advertising texts are simply brilliant, 5 seconds of real life. And if you accept the advice, I have one suggestion. I'm all ears. For starters, you're doing everything wrong. You forget that now you have money. First, you need to write something worthwhile. After that, you need a team. Do you think Nicholas Sparks just sat back and waited for the money to flow to him? Hell no. He had a publisher who believed in him enough to make him famous, an agent who kept his face in the public eye. I know a very good advertising agency that will probably give you a good deal. Liu intervened. Don't forget about a good lawyer. This is absolutely necessary. Know that I have handled intellectual property issues 10 times and won 8 cases when they went to trial. I know who to talk to and who to avoid. And to hell with the publisher. Do everything yourself so you have full control and don't have to pay anyone. It was Hank, the man who always thinks about money. Mona chimed in again, beaming at 6 months pregnant. I can say from my experience working with charities that a good PR person is essential. I'm obviously not working right now, so I can do most of it, and I have a lot of resources to turn to. Maitland chuckled. Okay, it's all over now. Lawyer, PR specialist, and advertising agency. Find yourself a smart agent, a good editor, write something worthwhile, and you're on your way to success. Damn it, why didn't I think of that? I thought about it for 3 weeks and then came up with the perfect story. A novel of sorts, it was basically the true story of Liu and Mona, with a few poetic asides from the facts. The editor I hired, a chain-smoking woman in her late 50s, said it had a lot of potential and then ruined it. I wanted to burn what was left of it when she finished. She grinned at my expression. Don't be upset, boy. If it were easy, everyone would be a best-selling writer, and that's really very good. I remember news articles about this story. It was interesting back then, and you can make it a lot brighter if you just try. Now here. I zoned out for a minute. Damn it, I didn't think for a second about how Liu and Mona would react. I had to fix it because if they said no, it would be over. I would never hurt my friends like that. I approached Mona first, handing her the revised story. It was a short read, about 120 pages, but I felt like I had said all that needed to be said, so I stopped. Janice, my editor, agreed. Nothing is as bad as when a new writer tries to stretch a short story into a full-length novel. These are just empty words that confuse the reader. You've got everything exactly right, so don't touch it. She didn't call me for 4 days, and I walked on pins and needles. Finally, on Thursday afternoon, Mona called. Our house at 7. That was the whole conversation. It took an hour to work up the courage to go. Mona met me at the door, hugging me so tightly that I couldn't breathe. Thank you, she said. It was wonderful. If I hadn't lived through it, it probably wouldn't have made me feel so strongly, but you did the right thing. Liu simply grinned and shook my hand. Great, Bruce. You know, all the locals will know it's about us, but I don't care. Maybe this will give couples hope that they can overcome anything if they really want to. Then they stopped smiling. There are several things we want to tell you about that period in our lives that no one knows about. We give you permission to use this as long as you are respectful. Fine? I, of course, agreed, and the next day Mona met me for a 3-hour lunch, telling me the whole truth from her side. I felt terrible for her and was on the verge of tears several times as she spoke. She took many breaks to compose herself. It wasn't so bad with Lou because I lived part of it with him, but it was still pretty hard. I knew he was in pain, but not that much. I thought about it for 2 weeks, threw away everything I had, and rewrote the whole story. Now it was a full-fledged novel, since new information required more volume. I took it to my editor, and she called me 3 days later. At first, Janice didn't say anything. I was almost sure her eyes moistened for a second. She sighed and leaned back in her chair. That's good, Bruce. Very good. Needs a little work, but not much. It will probably never be a bestseller, but it should be sustainable, especially if we advertise. Well, I didn't have a problem with that. Vic started a virtual campaign online, and we spent money on advertising on Amazon. Hank came up with the original concept, and soon the cover of A Bitter Goodbye appeared on 300 billboards throughout the Southeast. Sales started out slow, but gradually grew until we were selling about 300 Kindle downloads, 400 ebooks, and 200 hardcovers a day. In the first month, there were 950 reviews, none below 4 stars. I have appeared on local talk shows in Atlanta, Columbia, Charlotte, Birmingham, Raleigh, Charlottesville, Nashville, almost every major city in the Southeast region, plus Dallas, Oklahoma City, and a few other western cities. I deliberately did not show up in Florida, Savannah, or any other border town. Mona, hearing my wishes, ensured this. All the personal information about me on the internet or on the cover of a book simply said that I lived in Florida. It might have hurt sales, but I didn't want Tiff to find out. It almost got out of hand when Oprah chose a book for her club and invited Mona and Lou to appear on the show. They went instead of me, saying that I was terribly shy and did not like to be the center of attention. She laughed. If his next book is as good as this one, he might have to get over it. They appeared as they are in real life, sociable, attractive, and clearly very much in love. The book soared in the ratings and even made it to the bottom of the New York bestseller list for 2 weeks. I met Tiffany at lunch one afternoon. She was alone, I was alone, and instead of making it awkward, I grabbed her hand and told the hostess there was a table for two. She let me drag her along, and we sat down and started talking. Really talk like adults. Of course, we stayed on safe topics. Most of the conversation was about girls. I can't believe how big they have grown. Did you know that Caitlin is already on her period? Our little girl has become a woman, Bruce. I know I recently had to buy her pads. Is it true? Yes, it's true. It's just life, you know. You used to call me all the time and ask me to buy them for you. She smiled slightly, remembering. Yes, you were a good husband, especially in such things. I deflected this by asking her if she was working on a third husband. She frowned. No, I'm dating someone, and let's be honest, it's mostly for sex, and I haven't found anyone who meets my requirements. And you? Are you ready to plunge into family happiness again? I chuckled. No, I went through this. I don't want to anymore. I only loved one woman, Tiff, and that was you. However, I am dating someone, and we spend a lot of time together. I don't think it will last long, but I'm having a lot of fun while it lasts. She frowned. Seriously, she just admitted that she only dates guys for sex, but she frowns when I say I'm having fun. Women. Be careful, Bruce. After all, you have something to lose. It was early 2011, and the recession was almost at its peak. My financial advisor had a long conversation with Lou, me, and several others and explained everything to us 18 months ago. I got you into the housing boom, but I pulled you out of it when the sandcastles started to crumble. Will be worse. Much worse before it gets better. There are some great deals coming soon, and I want you to be ready to take advantage of them. Having said that, I am liquidating all assets while prices are still high. We can leave the money where it is, ready to be reinvested, and not have to pay capital gains taxes. Do you trust me? We trusted and followed his advice to the letter. I took out $400,000 to start my writing and have already paid it all back with a profit of $200,000, which grew every day. I'll be fine. I looked closely at Tiff. We were both 37 now, and I noticed a few tiny lines around her eyes. She looked tired. How's business going? Terrible. Our clients were mostly above this, so it didn't affect them for a while. It finally dawned on them, and they became very careful. Finding and financing new projects has become more difficult. Not a single bank on the planet wants to be anywhere near a land deal right now, not with the government breathing down their neck. I have a really good project going on right now. Land will never be cheaper. Contractors and suppliers are begging for work, so labor and material costs will be low. The local government and state are willing to give us all sorts of tax breaks, and it will create about 50 full-time and part-time jobs, plus 300 or 400 long-term construction jobs, so it's a win-win for everyone. If I could find private investors, I could get this going, but the usual sources have dried up. Are you okay? I'm making about half of what I used to make, but I'm fine. And you? It's strange, but things are going uphill. The smart ones know that the more they advertise, the more likely they are to sell. Many have cut costs, though, and some of our oldest customers will be out of business in less than 2 years if things don't change. She kissed me on the cheek, thanked me for lunch, and I watched her walk down the street, her butt doing interesting things in that tight skirt. I thought a lot about what she said, and the next morning I called Fred and told him about our conversation. He seemed very interested and said he would check it out. 2 days later, Lou, Fred, myself, and 2 other men I didn't know had a business lunch. Fred started the conversation. It's a good deal. We may not break even in the first couple of years, but when the economy improves, it will be a gold mine. There are only 420 possible building plots, and the cheapest house should cost around $500,000. I'm talking about 3 separate communities, one of which is for retirees, all gated and guarded. We need to sell 75 lots to pay for the land, and the course is being designed by a renowned designer, so the royalties will pay for its upkeep. Of course, it's all a risk, but the rewards can be huge. I'm willing to invest if you guys agree too. He waited until the others had left and talked to Lou and me about what he thought would be another good investment. I'm going to buy as many bank shares as I can. Liu frowned. Do you think this is a good idea? Banks are losing money by truckload. The only one that isn't in financial trouble is Hunt Bank, and that's only because it's private, and they're rumored to be starting to struggle too. Have you ever listened to politicians? They won't let the big banks fail. They will put in as much money as they want to support them, and when the economy recovers, we will be sitting on a gold mine. He looked around and stopped at Bank of America. He told us he believes the stock has bottomed out and can only go higher. We bought it at 67 cents a share, and 3.5 years later, it was trading at 54. I bought 100,000 shares, Lou bought 50, and Fred invested everything, buying 1 million. The profits bought Caitlin and Kristen new cars for their birthdays and bought me a large pontoon boat. It was moored in a marina on the private lake of a residential community and country club in which we had invested. We all had nice corner lots in a better community. I planned to build my new house there. The call was not unexpected. Is this your job? What are you talking about? Don't play with me, Bruce. Did the money come from you? It was a good deal. I've always been impressed by your business sense, Tiff. Why don't we make some money from this? It's just business. And my role wasn't that big. It was true, but she didn't know about the blind trust Liu had created. A fund owned by Caitlin and Kristen, with myself, Lou, and Fred as trustees, which contributed $500,000. He also bought both girls 5,000 shares of Bank of America stock. If things go well, they will be set for life. She mumbled for a minute before I interrupted her. Don't be a fool and look a gift horse in the mouth. Take the money and run. You put a lot of work into this. Business sense overcame personal indignation, and the deal went through. Her bosses were so impressed that they bought her a new car as a token of gratitude. BMW Boxer. From time to time, I saw her racing down the main street. I always smiled when I did it. I was excited and grinning at what I had planned. The new woman in my life was also a writer, much more successful, and we got along very well. We were more than friends, but nothing more. She was 45, 8 years older, but looked my age. And she was an absolute monster in bed. I thought Tiff and Dina might get angry, but it was like comparing kittens to a Bengal tiger. It got better and better. An added bonus was that she had 2 girls my age, and they got along well. I just released my second book, a long time that turned me inside out while I was writing it. Janice was practically drooling. You can't hide anymore, Bruce. It will put you in the public eye. I signed a contract with a publisher who rejected my work 17 times, and Mona and Liu's team made them pay dearly for each of them. I had an extra incentive when HBO bought the rights to Bittersweet Farewell for a really good amount of money. My future looked very bright. Sarah was talking about Vacation. The movie based on her 4th book was approaching its premiere, and she wanted to take a break before she hit the talk shows and the red carpet. Her daughters and I had many things in common, chief among them our absolute devotion to a popular boy band. I can get tickets and backstage passes, Bruce. This will be the thrill of a lifetime for them. I told the girls to pack light, that I was taking them somewhere special, and that there might be some shopping there. Sarah had a timeshare deal with an airline company, so we were on a private jet to New York before any of the girls could ask questions. We had our own room in a 5-star hotel. Sarah and I had a host, and the girls shared 2 bedrooms, separated by age, so the older girls had one and the younger girls the other. We dressed them to the nines and arrived at the garden. One of them even fainted when she saw who was on the privateer. We were the center of attention among thousands of screaming teenage girls. Sarah smiled in gratitude as I handed her a set of earplugs. When it was over, the girls were so excited they couldn't speak. We walked backstage, and the band's teens and 20s, once masters of meet and greets, greeted them by posing for photos and signing autographs. We spent the next day shopping in some very exclusive stores, visiting Guggenheim and New York City hotspots. The next morning, we were on a commercial flight to Japan. The kids were killing their Facebook pages and had followers in the thousands when the shit hit the fan. I received an angry email from Tiffany, bitching about how I didn't tell her where we were going and accusing me of making the whole trip for revenge. I didn't know it, but Caitlin wrote that it was the vacation of a lifetime. This hit her hard. It took me a little time to calm down and answer. What's wrong with you? I don't need your permission to take our kids on vacation. Maybe I should have told you, but Sarah invited us to join her at the last minute. In 2 to 3 weeks, the girls will be home safe and sound. 2 days later, we were in China on the Great Wall. We left China and went on a grand tour of England, Ireland, Scotland, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Spain. It truly was the vacation of a lifetime. 3.5 weeks after leaving, we returned home to Jacksonville. I was a little apprehensive about how much I spent, but it was worth every penny. The only bad thing about the trip was that Sarah and I broke up. On the last night, after yet another marathon of sex, she snuggled up to me, pulling out a small box from the nightstand drawer. I didn't know what to say when I opened it and saw the wedding rings. We're a good couple, honey. Our kids get along better than most sisters. I have more money than I know what to do with, and you're well on your way to becoming my financial equal, so the usual bullshit doesn't matter here. Marry me? I shocked her by saying no. Why? Because you don't really love me, Sarah. You like the idea that we are a strong couple in the literary world, at least in romance. All we have is that we have a great time in bed and our children get along with each other. We hadn't been together long enough. We don't know each other's annoying habits, prejudices, or addictions to certain situations. I really care about you, Sarah. You are a great mother, fun to be around, and very sexy. You've probably ruined me for normal women. And honestly, even though I care about you, I don't love you. Let's wait a little longer and see where this leads. Who knows, maybe in the future we will get married after all. Her reaction surprised me. It's all because of your bitchy ex-wife, right? Do you know that you still scream her name in your sleep? And who even carries around a photo of their ex? I realized when I read your book that you are still in love with her. I saw this flat-chested bitch, and honey, she ain't got what I have. You'll never find someone better than me, and I'm not going to wait. We will return home tomorrow. We will be polite when we say goodbye, but I will never sleep with you again. She left the room swaying her delicious buttocks, but I still didn't regret it. It's strange, but I dreamed about Tiffany that night when we were in our 20s. It was not a sexual dream, just a pleasant scene of two young people in love. I woke up and felt my cheeks, knowing that I had been crying. I was never able to fall asleep again. Since we returned 4 days early, I brought Tiffany's kids earlier than she expected. The girls missed their mother, and one day I found Caitlin crying in France. What's wrong, honey? I miss my mom. I wish she was with us. Is this how you felt when we left for Hawaii without you? Sorry, Dad. I was just a child. I didn't understand how you felt. I know that this was the reason for your divorce from your mother, but I also know that this was only the last straw. I don't remember much, but I remember something. Grandma is a little crazy, isn't she? Mom didn't treat you very well, did she? I knew I had to be careful. I loved your mother very much, dear, and she loved me. Otherwise, we would not have the two perfect children we have now. People change, honey, or sometimes one changes and the other remains the same. There are many reasons why your mom and I are no longer together, but I have never regretted the time I spent with her. And of course, I never regretted you and Kristen. Well, sometimes I'm sorry when you act up, but mostly I don't mind keeping you around. She broke the hug and grinned. We are not capricious. We're just a little smarter than most people, and it's hard for mere mortals to understand us. Anyway, we are the lucky ones. Even if you are divorced, you both still care about us. Many of my friends can't say that. Plus, I now have the memory of 2 vacations of a lifetime. Thank you, Dad. I was thinking about it when Tiff pulled up. The girls ran toward her before she stopped, and I flinched as she abruptly parked the car. She got out of the car with her arms outstretched, and soon they turned into a small woman's ball of tears. I respected this moment as I unloaded my suitcases and boxes of souvenirs. There were several more boxes there. I sent them by mail to avoid unnecessary hassle. The girls walked along the road, hugging their mother. I smiled, but the look on her face stopped me. Girls, kiss daddy and go into the house. As soon as the door closed, she attacked me. You just had to do it, right? You should have surpassed me. Well, congratulations, you won this round. It's been a long time since I heard one of the girls say, Mom, remember when we did that in Hawaii? No, now I have to listen to the Great Wall or the Eiffel Tower or listen to Bad Boys while they wear those t-shirts until I want to scream. I checked out that big busty cougar you were with. Best-selling author. She's a romance hack. I tried to remain calm and failed. She knew that by looking at my face, she had crossed some kind of line. I moved closer so the girls wouldn't hear. You know what, Tiff? Fuck you, which is apparently your favorite word now, and fuck the donkey you came on. Wait a minute, you are an ass. I didn't judge you when you slept with your friends or your little husband or your big friend, so leave the people I date and sleep with alone. It's none of your business, not anymore. It's been years since this was none of your business. Now tell me what you understand. She grew more and more pale, and when I finished my tirade, she ran into the house in tears. Another civil conversation with my ex. It's been over 4 years. Why can't she leave me alone? I asked this question 2 nights later to my friends. We gathered at O'Brien's for the homecoming party. Liu chuckled and Vic and Mona laughed. What? She's still in love with you, idiot. Everyone but you sees it. I know something, and I'm telling you, she has changed or is trying to change. I looked at Mona in surprise when Bill intervened. He was gloomy when his French mistress left him, but as his reputation grew and his victories multiplied, almost every woman in Jacksonville, upstate and southeast Georgia, seemed determined to sleep with him, and he didn't resist it. Heck, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars cheerleaders would have group sex with him if he showed even the slightest interest. And they all seemed to have one thing in common. Almost all were blonde, beautiful, and extremely well-built. I know for sure that she visits Teller. You know he's one of the best, and I've seen her coming out of his office every now and then. I'm glad. If ever a woman needed help, it was Tiffany. But if you had heard the tirade I received the last time I saw her, you would have quickly changed your mind about her loving me. Mona rolled her eyes. Men really are idiots. Her tirades are a cry for help, a way to get you to notice her. If you called her and said, "Be at my apartment at 8, naked and in the bedroom," she'd rip the door off its hinges to get in. Yes, and then I would put on my sneakers and run back to my safe zone. That will never happen, Mona. Let's see. Did you know that she and I sit on several of the same charitable boards? The first thing she told me when we met was that my husband is a very good lawyer. Everything else was about you. She once made fun of your writing, and I almost managed not to tell her. I didn't talk to her at the next 2 meetings. She hasn't said another word about your writing since then. She smiled again. This will all change soon. Are you ready to go out into the world? You're not going to change your mind, right? It was pretty hard being the PR person for a client who doesn't appear in public. No, it's for a good cause, and it's time. I took a leave of absence from the firm, and, to be honest, I'm not sure I'll ever return. I'm ready. Mona was fixing her makeup and smoothing out the seams on her stockings, seething with anger. She used to love such events, but searching for the perfect companion and making sure he behaved was becoming tiresome. They all expected her to lie in bed and spread her legs after the evening. It seemed like everyone she had sex with had their own agenda. Of course, as the most successful woman in her company, she wanted to appear in public as often as possible. Her assistant was thrilled to see her go. He will be there. It's a shame I couldn't go, but tickets sold out as soon as word got out that he would be signing books. This will be the first time he appears in public. You have to tell me what he looks like tomorrow. He simply must be beautiful. He simply must. Tell me everything, okay? Who are you even talking about, Hillary? About B. Davis. Both of his books made me cry, but the last one is very powerful and doesn't have a traditional happy ending. However, I couldn't put it down when I received it. It took 2 boxes of tissues, but I read it in one sitting. If he signs autographs, will you take one for me? Tiffany saw billboards all over the city. A bedroom scene with a 4-bed lined with high-heeled shoes, 4 inches or taller, from Jimmy Choo, Louboutins, and other famous designers. She had many of the same shoes, and right in the middle was a pair of hot pink Nikes. The caption read, "Sneakers under the bed, B. Davis." Something about this always made her uneasy. Tiffany only read newspapers and trade magazines, which annoyed Bruce terribly. She chuckled, thinking that every time Bruce saw those billboards, it would break his heart. Another successful writer, and it's not him. The book was obviously very popular and flew off the shelves. She heard a review on a talk show, and the critic raved about how emotionally strong she was. It was currently number 15 on the bestseller list and was expected to rise to number 1 in less than a month. There were rumors in industry circles that 6 production companies were vying for the film rights, and a figure of $12 million was mentioned. She didn't need to worry about her companion tonight. Her companion for the evening was her eldest daughter, who nearly threw a tantrum when she found out she was coming. She finally agreed, realizing that she could leave early under the guise of taking care of her daughter, and it would allow Caitlin to meet adults in situations she had never seen before. This will probably be a revelation for her. Their table mates were Mona and Lou Walters. At first she hated him, but later began to admire him. He wasn't trying to trap her as opposing counsel in their divorce. He was simply asking for what the law considered a fair division. She was still bitter about letting go of this money. She loved Mona, although at first she wanted to hate her. And when she found out that she still maintained close relations with Bruce, she could not help but ask her about his affairs. Mona realized this quite early and simply smiled and changed the subject. They met at the entrance, and Tiffany was suddenly glad that she had been careful with her appearance. Everyone looked great. The girl smiled as if she had a secret that she could barely keep in all day, and it was driving Tiffany crazy that she insisted on dressing up. She suddenly realized that it was not in vain. Mona and Caitlin smiled at each other, whispering something in their ears, their smiles growing wider. Something was happening, she was sure, but she couldn't understand what. They found their table and Tiffany accepted a kiss on the cheek from Liu, smiling when Caitlin turned away. Liu leaned over and kissed her tenderly, then sat her down. There was a lot of noise, but not so loud that they couldn't talk. "Okay, lay it out. Why are you 3 smiling like Cheshire cats?" Mona made a surprised face. "So is it noticeable? Okay, we lured you here to introduce you to someone. Stop frowning, Tiff. I think you'll like him. At least I hope so. I know Caitlin likes him. No, we won't tell, so stop asking. Relax, enjoy the dinner, the speeches if you can. There will be several special events before the marching band and local celebrities will be present. I heard there's going to be an auction of signed Jaguars jerseys or something like that. There will be a local writer here signing 200 copies of his book, all for charity, of course." Tiffany sighed, knowing she had a long evening ahead, especially when Caitlin said she wanted to meet the writer. However, she was representing her company, so she went and talked, shook hands, and said hello to old friends. She felt a little sad, thinking that her mother would have loved this event, but now she lives in Miami, undergoing therapy at a specialized center. She finally went too far with the wife of one of her lovers and harmed her. The court ordered her to undergo therapy, but it was better than prison and terribly expensive. She was annoyed that almost everyone smiled at her, as if they knew the joke and she didn't. What the hell is going on? The speeches were not too long, fortunately. It wasn't an election year, so no one was fighting for anything. After thanking everyone for participating, the host made some announcements, revealing how much money had been raised for the charity, and that 90% would go directly to the foundation, thanks to the efforts of Mona Walters and several others. Mona smiled and waved as the spotlight fell on her. Then he spoke again. "We are having a silent auction. Some art by local artists, CDs by local performers, everything on site to sign and leave a personal message, some sports memorabilia, and finally, author B. Davis will make his first public appearance here in Jacksonville and sign 300 copies of his latest book, Sneakers Under the Bed. This is 100 more than he promised, but the demand was very great. They cost $300 each, but remember, this is for charity, and he will sign each book personally. He will come out now to say a few words and take a seat at the table. Ladies and gentlemen, B. Davis. The applause surprised Tiffany with its volume and duration. Maybe she should have read this book. The man walked onto the stage, dressed in an obviously expensive suit, probably Armani or Brooks Brothers, his hair perfect, his black shoes shiny. When he entered the light, she almost fainted. She felt hands on either side of her, Caitlin and Mona. There, on stage, looking as good as she had ever seen him, was Bruce. He smiled at the crowd. Well, the secret is out. B. Davis is local guy Bruce Davis. Many of you know that I struggled with my writing for years until I received some advice and a lot of help from some very good friends. They and one or two people whom I will not name made me the writer I became. I want to publicly thank them for believing in me, and in one or two cases, for their lack of faith. All this played a role. I'll be taking my seat soon, and remember, this is for a good cause, so open your wallets and bags. Thank you for coming tonight. He faded into obscurity, reappearing at the table after the auction ended. There was already a line there. Tiffany felt like she was in Wonderland. Everything was almost unreal. Caitlin was smiling, and she suddenly realized that the girl had known all along, just like Mona. She turned to Mona. How long have you known this? Mona smiled as she stroked her second child's 3-month belly. From the very beginning, I'm his PR person. It was a very difficult job because he really didn't want publicity. I know a lot of it was because he didn't want you to find out. He said that if you found out and criticized him, it would break his heart. All this time, Tiff, he still can't forget you. It hit her like a ton of bricks. He achieved his dream, and she wasn't there. It was simply unfair. She told Mona about this, and was shocked when she hit her in the face, her eyes sparkling. Do you want justice? Let me tell you how he became successful. He used your money, bypassed the system, and published his own book. I want you to think about something. If you hadn't ridiculed his dream and invested in it, you might be standing next to him now, beaming, sharing in the fulfillment of your husband's ambitions. He would have been everything you wanted in him before the divorce. Instead, you stand on the sidelines, forced to watch. She took out a book and threw it on the table with a crash so that the glasses clinked. Now get off your ass and get in line. Let him know that you are finally proud of him. It might mean something to him. I look like a fool. What can I say? How about congratulations on your success? I'm glad you achieved your dream. Anything as long as it's positive. Let's go, Mom. I will go with you. She let her daughter pull her, walking slowly, feeling like she was being executed. There must have been some kind of signal because the crowd parted to allow her to move to the front of the line. Bruce didn't look up, so he was surprised when she spoke. Congratulations, Bruce. It seems, as with many things in my life, I was mistaken about your abilities as a writer. I wish you continued success. She picked up the book, looking at the cover again. It's about us, isn't it? About what I brought you to. He smiled warmly. You have no idea how much it means to hear from you. I see you have a book. Let me sign it. And yes, this story is about us, or more precisely, about me and how I dealt with our separation. Read it, Tiff. I was not cruel to you in it. He quickly signed his name and handed her the book. She felt offended. This is all? Your name? I would have thought there would be more. Bruce chuckled. Look at the dedication, Tiff. She opened the book to the first page. Here it is. Tiffany, with love. Without her, none of this would have happened. That's when the tears started. Caitlin and Liu gently led her back to the table. She sobbed, not paying attention to the people who were looking at her. I ruined my life, Mona, and his along with it. I was an arrogant bitch and karma bit me in the ass. I hope he finds someone who can give him the joy that I have stolen from him over the years." Mona leaned over and smiled, her words soft. "Bitch, don't make me hit you again. He doesn't need anyone but you. He will always want only you. But you gotta change, girl. You have to let him in. Look at me. I betrayed my husband, treated him horribly for a long time, and have regretted it ever since. He didn't deserve what I did to him. But in the end, we found our way back to each other. We found ways to love each other again. If we could do it, then anyone who really wants it can do it. Are you ready for this?" She looked across the room, watching Bruce dance a slow waltz with their daughter. When did he become so graceful? She lost sight of him, but, determined to correct her mistakes, she stood up. At that moment, Caitlin appeared. "He's leaving, Mom. You gave him a big shock, and he left." She looked at her mother, her 15-year-old eyes looking like 30-year-old ones. "Well, are you going to follow him?" She literally ran across the hall, but it was too late. She learned from Mona that he was going on a book signing tour and would also appear on several talk shows and teach several writing workshops. She cried all the way home while Mona drove the car. Caitlin and Kristen put her to bed and both climbed into bed with her and cuddled with her. This gave her enough peace to sleep. I was getting a little tired of being the literary prince of the moment. I was just a guy, which I constantly emphasized in every master class. I knew my speech by heart. There were several other writers there, and each contributed to the discussion. We were on stage at a small college, the room filled with aspiring writers hanging on every word. It was recorded for a local college TV station. Having finished their discussion, they opened the room for questions. "I have a question," the woman said as she walked onto the stage with a huge bag. I later learned that she had to pay $1,000 in bribes to get on stage. She told them that she is my wife, and it is my birthday, and she wants to surprise me. That part was at least true. I never in my life expected to see Tiffany on that stage. She stopped right in front of me. My eyes widened when I saw her. We were 500 miles from home. She was impeccably dressed, looking as attractive as I had ever seen her. "What are you doing here, Tiffany? Came this far to ridicule my success? God, Tiff, can't you leave me alone?" She looked at me with sadness on her face. "I'll leave, Bruce, as soon as I say what I have to say. I needed some visual aids to make a few points. I hope you understand." The first thing she pulled out of her bag was a pair of new pink Nikes. She carefully placed them on the floor in front of me. She then placed some papers and a small box on the table. Next was a container of charcoal liquid, which she doused on her sneakers. I know I've been spoiled for years, but therapy and getting my mother out of my life has helped tremendously. I love you, I have always loved only you, and although it may mean little to you, here I am. I'm yours if you accept me. My body, my soul, all my money, everything I have, or who I am. All this. I'm finally ready to be one. The papers are a complete statement of my assets, bank account information, all ready for your signature for us to own together. There's also a prenuptial agreement that says I have no right to any money you make through your writing or your advertising career. And I sold the house. It's too haunted for both of us. The girls and I want to give our opinions, but wherever you buy your home and whatever kind of home you buy, we will make it a loving home. I ask you, in front of all these witnesses, to marry me again. Give me another chance. Let me be the wife I was always meant to be." She was already on her knees, opening a small box. Inside were paired rings, elaborately carved, with small diamonds. She picked them up. "Bruce Davis, will you be my husband? My equal partner, the true love of my life? Can you find in your heart the strength to unite with me as one?" She looked desperate, tears streaming down her cheeks as she knelt, eyes full of hope and horror. Her mascara was running, her eyes were red, her hair was a little disheveled, but she was still the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. It took me a few seconds to speak, and I saw the tears flowing faster. I knelt with her, taking her hands. "Yes, I will accept, except for one small point. This must disappear. Like one whole, remember?" I threw the prenuptial agreement into the fire with my sneakers, and we remained on our knees, holding each other, touching, whispering words of love, ready to finally, after all these years, begin our lives together as one. The audience heard the entire exchange, and, although they did not understand it, began to applaud and cheer loudly as security ran around with fire extinguishers and retrieved the gun. We later watched a video of this, but did not hear any of it when we hugged and kissed. Finally, someone helped us to our feet, and she held on to me as if I might fly away. I asked for a microphone and introduced her to the audience as my wife. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. 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 Click to the next one.